Throughout history, humans have left behind traces of their existence that we still can't fully explain. From massive stone structures built with impossible precision to ancient artifacts that seem too advanced for their time, these archaeological mysteries continue to puzzle researchers today. From the ancient temples of Turkey to the underwater ruins off Japan's coast, from mysterious manuscripts that no one can read to precision-engineered stones that modern technology struggles to replicate, these archaeological puzzles challenge everything we thought we knew about our ancestors. Göbekli Tepe, Turkey. Picture a dusty archaeological survey from 1963 filed away and forgotten. The report mentioned broken limestone slabs scattered across what looked like an old medieval cemetery on a hill in southeastern Turkey. For 30 years, nobody gave it a second thought. Then, in 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt decided to take a closer look at that forgotten hilltop. Schmidt wasn't just any archaeologist. He had spent years working at Neolithic sites in the region, and something about that brief survey report bothered him. Medieval cemeteries didn't typically feature large stone slabs on elevated ground. When he arrived at the site called Göbekli Tepe, Belly Hill in Turkish, his trained eye immediately spotted what others had missed. The hill rose 50 feet above the surrounding landscape, its shape too perfect and symmetrical to be natural. Schmidt examined the limestone fragments that earlier researchers had dismissed as grave markers. These weren't random broken stones. They were carved, and they were massive, far too large for any medieval cemetery he'd ever seen. Schmidt returned in 1995 with a small team. Within days of beginning excavation, they uncovered something extraordinary. Those limestone fragments were actually parts of enormous T-shaped pillars, each one 16 feet tall and weighing up to 10 tons. The pillars were arranged in deliberate circles, creating what appeared to be the world's oldest known temple complex. The initial dating sent shockwaves through the archaeological community. Göbekli Tepe was approximately 11,000 years old, predating Stonehenge by 6,000 years and the Egyptian pyramids by 6,500 years. This was a monument from the very dawn of civilization, built by people who weren't supposed to have the social organization or technical skills for such a massive undertaking. As excavations continued, the true scope of the site became clear. Ground-penetrating radar revealed at least 16 stone circles spread across 22 acres. The team had uncovered less than 5% of the total complex. Each circle followed a similar pattern. 2 large central pillars surrounded by smaller ones arranged in a ring, all carved from limestone quarried directly from the hillside. The most remarkable discovery was what the site lacked. There were no cooking hearths, no houses, no trash pits, none of the typical signs of permanent settlement. Instead, archaeologists found over 100,000 animal bones, every single one from wild species. Gazelles made up 60% of the remains, along with wild boar, sheep, red deer, and dozens of bird species including vultures and cranes. This evidence painted a clear picture. Göbekli Tepe was built by hunter-gatherers, not farmers. Agriculture didn't exist yet. The very idea that nomadic peoples could organize the hundreds of workers needed to quarry, transport, and erect these massive stones challenged everything archaeologists thought they knew about early human societies. The stone pillars themselves told an even more intriguing story. Many were decorated with intricate carvings of animals, but not the gentle creatures that would later dominate human art. Instead, the pillars showed a menacing world of predators and dangerous animals. Lions prowled across the stone surfaces, scorpions raised their stingers, vultures spread their wings, spiders crept along the edges. These were the creatures that threatened hunter-gatherer communities, the animals that stalked them in the darkness. The prominence of vultures particularly fascinated researchers. These carrion birds appeared repeatedly in the carvings, often in prominent positions. Many cultures throughout history have seen vultures as psychopomps, creatures that transport souls to the afterlife. The abundance of vulture imagery suggested Göbekli Tepe may have served as a center for death rituals or ancestor worship. Recent discoveries have added new layers to the mystery. In 2020, excavators uncovered a life-sized wild boar sculpture carved from limestone. The detail was extraordinary, showing artistic skill that rivaled much later civilizations. Other finds included fragments of human bone mixed into the fill dirt between circles, supporting theories about the site's connection to burial practices. But perhaps the most puzzling discovery was what the builders did after completing each circle. Rather than maintaining their monuments, they deliberately buried them under tons of dirt and debris. Then they built new circles on top, creating layers of construction spanning centuries. This pattern of building and burying suggests a complex ritual cycle that archaeologists still don't understand. The construction process itself raised profound questions. Moving these massive stones required sophisticated knowledge of leverage, transportation, and engineering. All work was done with stone tools. No metal implements existed yet. The builders had to quarry the limestone, shape it precisely, transport it across the site, and erect it in perfect circles. This level of organisation suggested complex social structures that weren't supposed to exist among nomadic peoples. Traditional archaeological theory held that complex societies only emerged after agriculture provided the surplus food and settled lifestyle necessary for monumental construction. But Göbekli Tepe suggested the opposite sequence. Maybe the need to build something sacred actually drove the development of agriculture and complex societies. Maybe religion came first, and farming followed to support the growing communities gathering at religious sites. The timing supports this revolutionary idea. Göbekli Tepe was built during humanity's transition from hunting and gathering to farming. Archaeological evidence from nearby sites shows that within 1,000 years of the temple's construction, people in the region had domesticated sheep, cattle, and pigs. Just 20 miles away, geneticists found evidence of the world's oldest domesticated wheat, dating to about 10,500 years ago. Modern analysis continues to reveal new secrets. Advanced dating techniques suggest some parts of the site may be even older than originally thought, possibly 15,000 years old. The 2023 earthquakes that devastated the region provided unexpected research opportunities, showing how the ancient builders engineered their structures to withstand seismic forces. The symbolic language of Göbekli Tepe remains largely indecipherable. The gap between these ancient builders and the first written records spans 6,000 years. Without textual evidence, researchers must rely on archaeological context and comparative analysis to understand what the symbols meant to their creators. Some researchers propose that the animal carvings represent constellations, turning the stone circles into astronomical calendars. Others suggest they depict mythological narratives about the relationship between humans and the natural world. Still others believe they represent totems marking the territories of different groups that came together to build the monument. The site's location wasn't accidental. From Göbekli Tepe's summit, the view extends to the horizon in every direction. 11,000 years ago, this landscape would have been dramatically different. Instead of today's cultivated fields, the ancient builders would have looked out over flowing rivers, vast herds of wild animals, and forests of fruit and nut trees. The location commanded views of migration routes that brought both animals and people through the region. Today, excavations continue under new teams of archaeologists who have taken up Schmidt's work after his death in 2014. Each season brings discoveries that add pieces to the puzzle while raising new questions. Recent finds include evidence of sophisticated water management systems and stone channels that suggest more permanent occupation than previously thought. Yet fundamental questions remain unanswered. How did hunter-gatherer societies organize the massive labor force needed for construction? What specific rituals took place within the stone circles? Why did the builders choose to bury their monuments rather than preserve them? Most intriguingly, what connection exists between this ancient sacred site and the birth of agriculture that would transform human civilization? The Great Pyramids of Giza, Egypt, stand before the Great Pyramid of Giza, and one question dominates every other thought. How did they build this? For over 4,500 years, this monument has challenged human understanding. Not just its size, though standing 481 feet tall and containing over 2.3 million stone blocks is impressive enough. The real mystery lies in the precision, the engineering, and the sheer logistical impossibility of what ancient Egyptians accomplished with Bronze Age tools. The pyramid contains blocks weighing up to 70 tons, positioned with mathematical precision that modern engineers struggle to replicate. The base forms a nearly perfect square, with sides differing by less than 2 inches. The internal chambers are connected by passages that align with astronomical phenomena, And somewhere within this massive structure lie newly discovered voids that archaeologists still can't explain. The central question that has puzzled researchers for centuries is simple. How did workers move, lift, and position millions of massive stone blocks without modern machinery? The answers have spawned dozens of theories, each with compelling evidence and frustrating limitations. The straight ramp theory represents the most traditional explanation. This suggests that ancient Egyptians built enormous ramps extending from the pyramid base to its peak, allowing workers to drag stones up gentle inclines. Supporters point to archaeological evidence of ramps found near other pyramids, and the discovery of limestone ramp remains at several construction sites. The mathematics support this approach. A ramp with a 5-degree slope extending to the pyramid's peak would need to stretch over 3 miles long. While massive, this falls within the capabilities of a civilization that organized thousands of workers for decades-long projects. Hieroglyphic texts describe vast workforces quarrying stone, building infrastructure, and moving materials across Egypt. But the straight ramp theory faces significant challenges. Archaeological surveys around the Great Pyramid have found no evidence of such massive ramps. The volume of material needed would exceed that of the pyramid itself. Even more problematic, the ramp would need to be constantly rebuilt as the pyramid grew taller, requiring enormous additional labour and resources. The spiral ramp theory attempts to solve these problems by wrapping the ramp around the pyramid's exterior. This design would require much less material and could be built incrementally as construction progressed. French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin calculated that a spiral ramp with an 8.5-degree slope could reach the pyramid's peak, while using only a fraction of the material needed for a straight ramp. Physical evidence supports aspects of this theory. Satellite imagery has revealed what appear to be spiral patterns on the pyramid's faces, possibly remnants of ancient ramps. Additionally, the spiral design would explain how workers could maneuver the massive granite beams used in the king's chamber without requiring impossibly large turning spaces. However, the spiral ramp theory struggles with the pyramid's corner angles. The tight turns required at each corner would make it nearly impossible to drag multi-ton blocks around sharp angles. The ramp would also block access to the pyramid's faces, making it difficult to place the precision-cut casing stones that originally covered the entire structure. The internal ramp theory, also proposed by Houdin, suggests that after the first third of the pyramid was built using external ramps, construction continued using ramps built inside the pyramid itself. This theory proposes that workers carved internal galleries and ramps, allowing them to transport stones to higher levels without external infrastructure. Recent discoveries have provided intriguing support for this theory. In 2017, the Scan Pyramids project used cosmic ray muon tomography to discover a large void above the Grand Gallery. This void, about 100 feet long and 25 feet high, matches the size and location predicted by internal ramp theories. Additionally, ground-penetrating radar has detected what appear to be internal passages not visible from the pyramid's exterior. The internal ramp theory explains several puzzling features of the pyramid's design. The Grand Gallery's unusual dimensions and corbelled ceiling could have housed a sophisticated lifting system. The mysterious shafts extending from the king's and queen's chambers might have served as ventilation for workers labouring in internal spaces. Even the pyramid's unfinished subterranean chamber could represent an early construction phase later abandoned for internal work. Yet this theory faces its own challenges. Building internal ramps would require quarrying massive amounts of stone from within the pyramid, weakening its structure. The theory also requires sophisticated engineering knowledge to ensure the internal passages wouldn't compromise the pyramid's stability. No Egyptian texts describe such complex internal construction techniques. The water shaft theory presents a radically different approach. This suggests that ancient Egyptians used water-filled shafts to float heavy stones to higher levels. Proponents argue that the pyramid's location near the Nile, combined with evidence of sophisticated water management systems elsewhere in Egypt, supports this possibility. Archaeological evidence for water usage includes the discovery of boat pits around the pyramid and the presence of what appear to be water channels in nearby structures. The theory suggests that workers could have used wooden floats and water-filled shafts to reduce the effective weight of heavy stones, making them easier to transport vertically. But the water shaft theory faces significant practical obstacles. The pyramid's internal chambers show no evidence of water damage or the mineral deposits that would result from regular flooding. The precise joints between stones suggest dry construction techniques. Most importantly, the theory requires water pressure systems that exceed demonstrated Egyptian engineering capabilities. Recent technological advances have added new dimensions to these debates. The Scan Pyramids project has identified multiple previously unknown voids within the pyramid using non-invasive scanning techniques. In 2023, researchers confirmed the existence of a 30-foot-long corridor near the pyramid's north face, detected using cosmic ray muon tomography. These discoveries support theories about internal construction methods while raising new questions. The big void above the Grand Gallery appears to be a deliberately created space, not an accident of construction. Its size and location suggest it served a specific purpose, possibly related to the pyramid's construction or its function as a tomb. The corridor discovered in 2023 may represent part of an internal ramp system, supporting Houdin's theories. However, its exact purpose remains unclear. The passage doesn't connect to any known chambers, and its orientation doesn't match expected patterns for either construction ramps or burial chambers. Modern engineering analysis has revealed the sophistication of the pyramid's construction. The massive granite beams in the king's chamber, each weighing up to 70 tons, were cut and positioned with remarkable precision. The relieving chambers above the king's chamber use a complex system of interlocking blocks designed to distribute weight and prevent collapse. The precision of the stonework suggests advanced knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and engineering. The pyramid's base aligns with cardinal directions to within 1/15 of a degree. The internal passages align with specific stars and constellations. The overall proportions encode mathematical relationships that wouldn't be formally described until thousands of years later. Yet this sophistication was achieved using tools that seem inadequate for the task. Archaeological evidence shows that Egyptian workers used copper chisels, wooden levers, and rope systems to quarry and move massive stones. While effective, these tools require enormous human effort and sophisticated organization to accomplish the pyramid's construction. The workforce question adds another layer of complexity. Traditional estimates suggest that 20,000 to 30,000 workers labored on the pyramid for over 20 years. These workers needed to be fed, housed, and organized. Recent discoveries of workers' villages near the pyramid provide evidence of massive logistical operations, including bakeries, breweries, and medical facilities. The social organization required for pyramid construction may represent the theory's most impressive aspect. Coordinating thousands of workers, managing complex supply chains, and maintaining quality control over decades of construction required administrative systems that rivaled modern project management. Each theory about pyramid construction contains elements of truth, while facing significant challenges. The straight ramp theory explains the basic mechanics, but lacks archaeological evidence. The spiral ramp theory solves material problems, but struggles with practical logistics. The internal ramp theory matches recent discoveries but requires unprecedented engineering knowledge. The water shaft theory offers innovative solutions but contradicts physical evidence. Perhaps the most likely explanation combines elements from multiple theories. The pyramid's construction may have used different techniques at different stages, starting with external ramps for the foundation and transitioning to internal systems for the upper levels. The recently discovered voids may represent evidence of multiple construction phases, each using the most appropriate technique for its specific challenges. Stonehenge, England. Walk into any bookstore and you'll find shelves lined with books claiming to reveal Stonehenge's true purpose. Ancient aliens built it as a landing pad. Druids used it for human sacrifice. It's a giant calendar, a healing temple, or a portal to other dimensions. Hollywood has featured it in everything from horror films to fantasy epics. The History Channel's Ancient Aliens has devoted entire episodes to wild theories about extraterrestrial involvement. For many people, Stonehenge represents the ultimate ancient mystery, a monument so impossible that only supernatural explanations make sense. This cultural obsession with Stonehenge began long before modern media. In the 1600s, antiquarian John Aubrey first suggested that Druids built the monument. By the 1700s, William Stukeley had expanded this theory, describing elaborate Druidic ceremonies and human sacrifices among the stones. The Romantic movement of the 1800s embraced these dramatic tales, turning Stonehenge into a symbol of ancient wisdom and mystical power. The 20th century brought even wilder theories. In 1965, astronomer Gerald Hawkins published Stonehenge Decoded, claiming the monument was a sophisticated computer for predicting eclipses. Popular culture ran with this idea, spawning countless books, documentaries, and movies about ancient astronomical knowledge. The rise of the New Age movement in the 1960s added beliefs about healing crystals, ley lines, and spiritual energy fields. Today, tens of thousands of people gather at Stonehenge each summer solstice, many believing they're participating in ancient rituals. Neo-Druids perform ceremonies, crystal healers claim to channel the stone's energy, and conspiracy theorists search for evidence of alien technology. The monument has become a pilgrimage site for those seeking connection to mysterious ancient powers. But what does the archaeological evidence actually tell us about Stonehenge? The reality is both more complex and more fascinating than any fictional account. Modern archaeological techniques have revealed that Stonehenge was built in 5 distinct phases over more than 1,500 years, from about 3,100 BCE to 1600 BCE. The monument we see today represents the final phase, but it began as something completely different. A simple circular earthwork with wooden posts. The first phase, around 3100 BCE, consisted of a circular bank and ditch with 56 holes around the perimeter. These Aubrey holes, named after John Aubrey, once held wooden posts. Archaeological evidence shows that cremated human remains were buried in many of these holes, making this early version of Stonehenge a cemetery rather than a temple. Around 2600 BCE, the builders began the second phase, abandoning timber for stone. They arranged approximately 80 bluestones in 2 concentric circles. These stones, each weighing about 4 tons, came from the Preseli Hills in Wales, over 150 miles away. Recent archaeological work has identified the exact quarries where these stones were extracted, revealing the enormous effort required to transport them. The famous sarsen stones that dominate today's Stonehenge were erected around 2500 BCE during the third phase. These massive stones, some weighing up to 50 tons, were dragged from Marlborough Downs about 20 miles north. The builders shaped them using only stone hammers, creating the precise joints that hold the structure together. The sarsen circle originally contained 30 upright stones, topped by a continuous ring of horizontal lintels. Inside this circle they built the trilithons, 5 massive doorways made of 2 uprights topped by a lintel. The largest trilithon stood 24 feet high and weighed over 100 tons. The precision of the stonework rivals anything achieved by later civilizations, despite being accomplished with Bronze Age technology. Radiocarbon dating has demolished many popular myths about Stonehenge's builders. The monument was largely complete by 2000 BCE, more than 1,000 years before the Celtic culture that produced the Druids even existed. The real builders were Neolithic and Bronze Age peoples, whose DNA analysis reveals they were descended from early farmers who migrated from Anatolia and the Iberian Peninsula. These weren't primitive hunter-gatherers struggling for survival. Archaeological evidence from the surrounding landscape shows they lived in a complex society with sophisticated knowledge of astronomy, engineering, and logistics. The nearby Durrington Walls settlement housed thousands of people during Stonehenge's construction, complete with evidence of feasting, craft production, and social hierarchies. The astronomical alignments at Stonehenge are real, but they're simpler than popular theories suggest. The monument is oriented toward the sunrise on the summer solstice and sunset on the winter solstice. From the centre of the stone circle, the sun rises directly above the heel stone on the longest day of the year. This alignment was clearly intentional, but it doesn't require advanced mathematical knowledge, just careful observation of the sun's annual movement. Claims about Stonehenge being a complex astronomical computer have been thoroughly debunked. While the monument does align with some lunar and stellar positions, these alignments are either coincidental or result from the basic solar orientation. The idea that it could predict eclipses hundreds of years in advance has no archaeological support. The healing properties attributed to Stonehenge also have archaeological roots, though not in the way New Age believers imagine. Chemical analysis of the bluestones reveals they come from springs in Wales that were considered sacred by prehistoric peoples. Some of the cremated remains found at the site show evidence of illness and injury, suggesting people may have brought their sick to the monument seeking healing. but this healing likely involved ritual and ceremony rather than mystical energy fields. The acoustic properties of the stone circle do create unusual sound effects. Voices and music resonate differently within the monument. These acoustic phenomena may have enhanced the psychological impact of ceremonies, making participants feel they were experiencing something supernatural. The true purpose of Stonehenge emerges from examining it within its broader landscape. The monument sits at the centre of a vast prehistoric complex including burial mounds, ceremonial avenues, and other stone circles. This was clearly a sacred landscape where people gathered for important ceremonies over many centuries. The investment required to build Stonehenge reveals its importance to its builders. Transporting the bluestones from Wales represents one of the greatest logistical achievements of prehistoric Europe. The effort involved thousands of people working for decades, suggesting the monument held significance far beyond any single community. Recent discoveries continue to refine our understanding. In 2020, archaeologists discovered a circle of massive pits surrounding Stonehenge, each one precisely placed to form a perfect circle over a mile in diameter. These pits, created around the same time as the monument, suggest the sacred landscape was even more complex than previously thought. The durability of Stonehenge myths reveals something profound about human psychology. We want ancient peoples to have possessed secret knowledge or supernatural powers. The reality that Bronze Age farmers created one of the world's most impressive monuments through careful planning, hard work, and sophisticated understanding of their environment seems almost disappointing compared to stories of alien intervention or mystical powers. Yet the archaeological truth is far more inspiring than any fiction. Stonehenge represents one of humanity's earliest attempts to create something permanent, something that would connect future generations to the cosmos and to their ancestors. The monument's builders succeeded beyond their wildest dreams, creating a structure that still draws people from around the world, seeking connection to something greater than themselves. Pumapunku, Bolivia. When archaeologist Alexei Vranich first aimed his laser scanner at the scattered stone blocks of Pumapunku, he expected to document another ruined temple complex. What his instruments revealed would challenge everything scientists thought they knew about Bronze Age engineering capabilities. The data showed cutting precision that rivaled modern machine tools, joint tolerances measured in fractions of millimeters, and construction techniques that seemed to defy the technological limitations of their time. Since the 1990s, researchers have applied increasingly sophisticated scientific methods to understand how ancient Tiwanaku builders created these remarkable stone monuments. The investigation has employed everything from electron microscopy to 3D laser scanning, revealing details invisible to the naked eye and raising questions that continue to puzzle engineers and archaeologists alike. The scientific investigation began with basic measurements. Using precision instruments, researchers documented that many stone blocks at Pumapunku were cut with tolerances of less than 1 millimeter. The famous H-shaped blocks, weighing up to 600 kilograms each, fit together so precisely that a sheet of paper cannot be inserted between the joints. This level of accuracy requires not just skilled craftsmanship, but sophisticated understanding of geometry and measurement techniques. Ground-penetrating radar surveys revealed the full extent of the site beneath centuries of accumulated soil and debris. The technology showed that Pumapunku originally consisted of multiple terraced platforms covering over 20 acres, with the famous stone blocks representing only a small fraction of the original complex. The surveys also identified numerous buried structures and artifacts that have guided subsequent excavations. Petrographic analysis of stone samples provided crucial insights into the builders' techniques. Under electron microscopy, researchers examined thin sections of the andesite blocks, studying the mineral composition and crystal structure. This analysis revealed tool marks invisible to casual observation, parallel striations and surface textures that indicated specific cutting methods and sequence of operations. The microscopic evidence showed that Pumapunku's builders used a combination of techniques to shape their stones. Initial rough shaping was accomplished through controlled fracturing, using the natural grain and weakness planes in the andesite. Final shaping involved grinding and polishing with harder abrasive materials, likely quartz sand and water. The tool marks indicate the use of copper implements, which archaeological evidence confirms were available to the Tiwanaku civilization. Photogrammetry and 3D modelling allowed researchers to create precise digital reconstructions of the scattered blocks. By measuring every surface and angle with millimeter accuracy, scientists could attempt virtual reconstructions of the original structures. This work revealed that many blocks were cut as interlocking pieces of larger architectural elements, similar to a three-dimensional puzzle designed to fit together in only one configuration. The precision of these joints presented a significant puzzle. Modern stonemasons struggle to achieve similar tolerances using power tools and laser measuring devices, yet the Tiwanaku accomplished this with copper chisels, stone hammers, and measuring devices that left no archaeological trace. The investigation process focused on understanding not just how they cut the stones, but how they maintained such consistent accuracy across hundreds of individual blocks. Experimental archaeology provided some answers. Researchers attempted to replicate Pumapunku's stonework using only tools available to ancient builders. The experiments confirmed that copper implements could indeed cut andesite, but the process required enormous amounts of time and skilled labour. Cutting and shaping a single H block would require several craftsmen working for months. The experiments also revealed the sophistication of the builders' techniques. Achieving the precision found at Pumapunku required not just good tools, but systematic approaches to measurement and quality control. The builders would have needed standardized measuring devices, consistent techniques for marking cutting lines, and methods for checking accuracy during the shaping process. Chemical analysis of the stone surfaces provided additional insights. X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy detected trace elements that revealed the sources of raw materials. The andesite came from quarries across Lake Titicaca, requiring transport of massive blocks over difficult terrain. The red sandstone used for the platforms came from closer sources, but still required careful selection and transport. Recent investigations using advanced imaging techniques have revealed previously unknown details about the construction process. High-resolution photography under controlled lighting conditions revealed subtle tool marks and construction sequences invisible under normal viewing conditions. These findings showed that the builders worked systematically, completing each block to final specifications before moving to the next piece. The investigation also employed acoustic analysis to understand the site's sonic properties. Researchers discovered that the stone arrangements create unusual acoustic effects, with sounds resonating and focusing in specific patterns. While these effects might have been intentional design features, they also provided clues about the original architectural configuration. Structural analysis using finite element modeling tested various theories about the original building design. Computer simulations revealed that the scattered blocks could indeed have formed stable architectural structures, but only if assembled in specific configurations. The analysis helped identify which blocks belonged together and how the original buildings might have appeared. The findings consistently pointed to a level of technical sophistication that challenged conventional understanding of Bronze Age capabilities. The precision of the stonework, the complexity of the interlocking joints, and the scale of the construction project all suggested advanced engineering knowledge and sophisticated organizational abilities. Yet the scientific investigation also revealed the limitations of the builders' technology. Despite their remarkable achievements, the Pumapunku builders worked within clear technological constraints. They used no metal harder than copper, no mechanical devices beyond simple levers and ramps, and no transportation methods beyond human labour and possibly llama assistance. The investigation process also highlighted the challenges of studying damaged archaeological sites. Centuries of looting, weather erosion, and modern disturbance had scattered the original configuration beyond recognition. Even with advanced scientific methods, researchers could only partially reconstruct the builders' original intentions. Ground truth testing of various theories through controlled excavation provided crucial validation for the scientific findings. Small-scale excavations in undisturbed areas confirmed the presence of additional stone blocks and architectural features predicted by the remote sensing surveys. These discoveries validated the scientific methods while revealing new aspects of the site's complexity. The cumulative scientific evidence painted a picture of remarkable ancient engineering achievement, but also highlighted significant gaps in our understanding. While researchers could document what the Tiwanaku builders accomplished, the specific techniques they used to achieve such precision remained partially mysterious. The absence of detailed tool marks, measuring devices, or construction drawings left crucial aspects of their methods open to interpretation. Recent developments in non-destructive analysis techniques continue to reveal new details about Pumapunku's construction. Advanced CT scanning of selected blocks has revealed internal structures and potential construction flaws invisible from external examination. These techniques allow researchers to study the stone's internal composition without damaging these irreplaceable artifacts. Sacsayhuamán, Peru. In the year 1438, a young Inca prince named Qasr Yupanqui faced the greatest crisis of his life. Enemy warriors from the Chancas tribe had surrounded Cusco, the heart of the still small Inca kingdom. Most of the royal family had fled to mountain strongholds, leaving the city defenseless. But this prince, who would later take the name Pachacuti, meaning Earthshaker, had a vision that would transform not only his own fate but the entire landscape of South America. When Pachacuti emerged victorious from that desperate battle, he immediately began planning the most ambitious construction project the Andes had ever seen. He would rebuild Cusco as the center of the world, and crowning this new capital would be a fortress so magnificent that it would serve as both a military stronghold and a sacred temple. This fortress would be called Sacsayhuamán, meaning satisfied falcon in the Quechua language. The Inca Empire in the 15th century was unlike any civilization that had come before it. In less than a century, it would grow from a small kingdom around Cusco to an empire stretching over 2,500 miles from Ecuador to Chile. At its peak, Tawantinsuyu, as the Incas called their realm, ruled over 12 million people speaking dozens of different languages. Yet this vast empire was held together not just by military might, but by a sophisticated system of administration, engineering, and religious beliefs that centered on the divine power of the Sapa Inca. Pachacuti understood that controlling such an empire required more than just conquest. He needed to demonstrate the permanence and divine authority of Inca rule through monuments that would last forever. Sacsayhuamán would serve as the ultimate symbol of this power, visible from every corner of Cusco and beyond. The fortress would guard the capital while also serving as a temple complex where the most important religious ceremonies of the empire would take place. Construction began around 1438 and continued for over 90 years, spanning the reigns of multiple Inca rulers. Historical accounts describe how over 20,000 men worked on the project, with workers drawn from all corners of the growing empire. The Spanish chronicler Pedro Tiesa de León, who visited the site in 1553, wrote that the Incas gathered 20,000 men from different provinces and worked them in shifts, with some quarrying stones, others transporting them, and still others shaping and fitting the massive blocks. The mystery of Sacsayhuamán lies not just in its construction, but in how it fits into the broader narrative of Andean civilization. When the Spanish conquistadors first saw the fortress in 1533, they were confronted with something that challenged their understanding of what primitive peoples could accomplish. The massive walls, built without mortar, contained stones weighing up to 300 tons fitted together with such precision that a knife blade could not slip between the joints. But Sacsayhuamán was not built in isolation. It represented the culmination of architectural traditions that stretched back over 1,000 years in the Andes. The Incas had inherited and perfected techniques first developed by earlier civilizations like the Wari and Tiwanaku. Recent archaeological evidence suggests that the site may have been occupied by the Quilchi culture as early as 1100 CE, with the Incas building upon and expanding these earlier foundations. The fortress design reflected the Inca worldview in which Cusco was literally the center of the universe. The city was laid out in the shape of a puma, with Sacsayhuamán representing the head of this sacred animal. The three massive zigzag walls that still dominate the site were said to represent the teeth of the puma, while the entire complex served as a gateway between the earthly realm and the world of the gods. Spanish chroniclers like Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, who had both Spanish and Inca ancestry, provided crucial insights into the construction methods. He described how the Incas used no wheeled vehicles or iron tools, instead relying on human labour, copper implements, and an understanding of leverage and engineering that allowed them to move stones weighing hundreds of tons across difficult terrain. The historical significance of Sacsayhuamán extends far beyond its impressive architecture. The fortress played a crucial role in the Spanish conquest of the Inca Empire. In 1536, during the Great Rebellion led by Manco Inca, the fortress became the center of indigenous resistance. For months, Inca warriors held the stronghold against Spanish forces, using the massive walls and elevated position to rain down stones and arrows on their enemies. The siege of Sacsayhuamán became one of the most desperate battles of the conquest period. Spanish accounts describe how the fortress seemed impossible to capture, with its massive walls and strategic position making it nearly impregnable. Only through the use of cavalry, steel weapons, and ultimately fire did the Spanish finally breach the defences. The capture of Sacsayhuamán marked the end of organised Inca resistance and the beginning of permanent Spanish control over the Andes. Yet the mystery of Sacsayhuamán extends beyond its role in the conquest. The precision of the stonework, the massive scale of the construction, and the sophisticated understanding of engineering principles demonstrated by the builders challenges conventional assumptions about pre-Columbian American civilizations. The fortress was built by a society that had no written language, no wheeled vehicles, and no iron tools, yet achieved a level of architectural sophistication that impressed even the Spanish conquistadors. The construction techniques used at Sacsayhuamán reveal the sophisticated knowledge systems of the Inca Empire. The builders understood principles of seismic engineering that allowed their structures to survive centuries of earthquakes. They developed methods for quarrying, transporting, and shaping massive stones that required precise coordination of thousands of workers. They created a water management system that supplied the fortress and the city below, demonstrating advanced understanding of hydraulic engineering. Archaeological investigations have revealed that Sacsayhuamán was far more than just a military fortress. The complex included residential areas, storage facilities, religious temples, and ceremonial spaces. The famous circular tower called Muyukmarca, which was dismantled by the Spanish, appears to have been a royal residence or temple rather than a defensive structure. The entire complex represented a miniature version of the Inca cosmos, with different areas serving specific religious and administrative functions. The cultural impact of Sacsayhuamán extended throughout the Inca Empire and beyond. The fortress served as a model for other Inca construction projects, with similar techniques and architectural principles applied to sites like Machu Picchu, Ollantaytambo, and Pisac. The knowledge and skills developed during its construction helped create the architectural legacy that would define Inca civilization. Modern investigations have revealed that the mystery of Sacsayhuamán extends even deeper into the past. Archaeological evidence suggests that the site was built on top of much older structures, possibly dating back to the Quilque culture that occupied the region before the Inca rise to power. This continuity of occupation suggests that the location held sacred significance for multiple generations of Andean peoples. The fortress also challenges our understanding of the relationship between technology and civilization. The Incas accomplished what many consider impossible without the technological advantages that European civilizations possessed. They developed alternative solutions to engineering problems, created organizational systems that could coordinate massive construction projects, and achieved levels of precision that modern builders struggle to match. The broader historical implications of Sacsayhuamán extend to our understanding of indigenous American civilizations and their capabilities. The fortress demonstrates that the technological and organizational achievements of pre-Columbian peoples were far more sophisticated than early European accounts suggested. It represents a different path of human development, one that achieved remarkable results through intensive human labor, sophisticated planning, and deep understanding of natural materials and forces. Baalbek, Lebanon. It was the summer of 1751 when English antiquarian Robert Wood first laid eyes on the ruins of Baalbek. He had travelled for months through the Ottoman Empire, enduring bandits, harsh weather, and political upheaval to reach this remote Lebanese site. What he found there would challenge everything Europeans thought they knew about ancient engineering. Standing before 3 enormous stone blocks, each weighing over 800 tons and fitted together with impossible precision, Wood wrote in his journal that he was witnessing the most stupendous remains of antiquity. Wood's account, published in 1757 as The Ruins of Baalbek, became the first detailed European description of what would become one of archaeology's most enduring mysteries. His carefully measured drawings and descriptions sparked decades of debate about how ancient builders could have moved and positioned stones that dwarfed anything found elsewhere in the Roman world. The mystery deepened when Wood discovered that these massive blocks weren't just scattered ruins, They were integral parts of a temple complex that represented the pinnacle of Roman architectural achievement. The formal archaeological investigation of Baalbek began in the late 19th century when German Kaiser Wilhelm II authorized the first systematic excavations. In 1898, a team led by Otto Puchstein arrived at the site with the ambitious goal of completely uncovering and documenting the ancient complex. What they found over the next 7 years of intensive excavation exceeded even their most optimistic expectations. The German team discovered that the site contained not just one temple, but an entire sacred complex covering over 20 acres. The Temple of Jupiter, built during the reign of Emperor Augustus, stood as the largest religious structure in the Roman Empire. Its foundation incorporated the famous trilithon, 3 limestone blocks weighing between 750 and 800 tons each, positioned 20 feet above ground level and fitted together with joints so precise that a knife blade could not slip between them. But the excavations revealed something even more remarkable. In the nearby quarry, archaeologists found 3 additional blocks that had been cut and shaped, but never transported to the temple site. The largest of these, dubbed the Stone of the Pregnant Woman, weighed an estimated 1,000 tons. Later discoveries would reveal an even larger block, weighing approximately 1,242 tons, making it the heaviest work stone block in the world. The archaeological work faced numerous challenges. The site had been continuously occupied for over 2,000 years, with Islamic, Byzantine and Crusader structures built on top of the Roman foundations. Carefully removing these later additions while preserving the archaeological record required painstaking work. The team used early photographic techniques to document their findings, creating a visual record that remains valuable to researchers today. Friedrich Raget, who worked at the site in the 1970s, made crucial discoveries about the construction sequence. His analysis revealed that the trilithon blocks were not simply placed on top of smaller stones, but were actually incorporated into the foundation during the initial construction phase. This finding challenged theories that the massive blocks had been added later or represented repairs to earlier structures. The excavations also revealed sophisticated engineering techniques that explained how the Romans accomplished their seemingly impossible feat. The quarry site sits at a slightly higher elevation than the temple complex, meaning the blocks could be moved downhill using ramps and sledges. Deep grooves cut into the stone blocks showed where ropes and lifting devices had been attached. The Romans had developed a systematic approach to megalithic construction that combined careful planning with innovative engineering solutions. Modern archaeological techniques have revealed additional details about the construction process. Ground-penetrating radar has identified the ancient road system used to transport the blocks from quarry to temple site. Microscopic analysis of the stone surfaces has revealed tool marks that indicate the specific cutting techniques used by Roman craftsmen. These findings consistently point to sophisticated but achievable methods using technology available to Roman engineers. The investigation has also uncovered evidence of the massive workforce required for the project. Inscriptions found at the site mention specific work crews and their supervisors. Archaeological evidence suggests that hundreds of skilled stoneworkers, supported by thousands of labourers, worked on the project for decades. The scale of organisation required rivals modern construction projects, but remains within the capabilities of the Roman Empire at its peak. Recent discoveries have added new dimensions to the mystery. In 2014, archaeologists uncovered a third massive block in the quarry, even larger than the Stone of the Pregnant Woman. This block, measuring 64 feet long and weighing over 1,200 tons, was apparently abandoned after partial completion. The discovery suggests that Roman engineers were pushing the limits of their capabilities, attempting to transport increasingly massive stones. The archaeological evidence has also revealed the religious significance of the massive construction. The Temple of Jupiter at Baalbek served as the centre of worship for Jupiter Heliopolitanus, a fusion of Roman and local Semitic deities. The enormous scale of the temple complex was intended to demonstrate the power and permanence of Roman rule in the region. The massive stones served both practical and symbolic functions, creating a monument that would inspire awe in visitors for centuries to come. Ongoing research continues to reveal new aspects of the site's history. Excavations have uncovered evidence of pre-Roman construction, suggesting that the site held religious significance long before the Roman conquest. The discovery of older foundations beneath the Roman structures indicates that the massive temple complex was built on top of earlier sacred sites, following a pattern common throughout the ancient world. The investigation has also revealed the sophisticated planning required for the project. The entire complex was designed as a unified architectural composition, with the massive stones positioned to create specific visual effects. The trilithon blocks were carefully oriented to catch and reflect sunlight, creating dramatic shadows and highlights that enhanced the temple's impressive appearance. Every aspect of the construction was calculated to maximize the psychological impact on visitors. Advanced dating techniques have provided new insights into the construction timeline. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials found in the mortar shows that construction began during the reign of Augustus and continued for over 200 years. The massive scale of the project required multiple generations of workers, with techniques and knowledge passed down through families of skilled craftsmen. The mystery extends beyond the transportation of the massive stones to their precise positioning. The trilithon blocks were not simply stacked on top of each other, but were carefully fitted into a complex three-dimensional puzzle. Each block was shaped to connect with its neighbours at specific angles, creating a structure that has survived earthquakes, wars, and centuries of weathering. Modern engineering analysis has confirmed that the Romans possessed the technical knowledge necessary to accomplish the construction. Computer modelling shows that the massive stones could have been moved using wooden rollers, ramps, and sophisticated lever systems. The key was not advanced technology, but rather careful planning, skilled craftsmanship, and the organisational capacity to coordinate hundreds of workers over extended periods. Yet significant mysteries remain. The exact methods used to lift the massive stones to their final positions are still debated. No contemporary Roman sources describe the specific techniques used at Baalbek, leaving archaeologists to reconstruct the process from physical evidence and comparisons with other Roman construction projects. The absence of detailed construction records adds to the site's enigmatic character. The ongoing archaeological investigation continues to reveal new details about this remarkable achievement. Each excavation season brings new discoveries that add pieces to the puzzle while raising fresh questions about the capabilities and motivations of the ancient builders. Nan Madol, Micronesia. Imagine sailing through the Pacific Ocean and stumbling upon something that shouldn't exist. A city built entirely on water, with massive stone walls rising from coral reefs. This is Nan Madol, off the coast of Pohnpei in Micronesia, and it presents one of the most puzzling questions in archaeology. How did ancient people transport and position millions of tons of basalt stones across water to build this floating city? The mystery isn't just about the engineering, it's about the sheer impossibility of what we're seeing. We're talking about 92 artificial islands, connected by canals, built from basalt columns that weigh up to 50 tons each. Some estimates suggest the entire complex contains over 250 million tons of stone material. The question that has baffled researchers for decades is simple. How did they do it? The first theory comes from the local people themselves. According to Pohnpeian oral tradition, twin sorcerers named Olosopa and Olosipa built Nan Madol using magic. The stories tell of massive basalt stones flying through the air, guided by supernatural forces. While this might sound like folklore, these oral histories have been passed down for over 1,000 years, and they consistently describe the same impossible feat, stones moving without human effort. Modern science, however, demands more practical explanations. The most widely accepted theory among archaeologists is the raft transport method. Researchers propose that the ancient builders quarried the basalt columns from Sokeh's rock, a volcanic plug on the opposite side of the island, then floated them on large rafts across the lagoon. The basalt's natural columnar structure would have made it easier to handle, and the buoyancy of the rafts could have supported the massive weight. But here's where this theory hits problems. The distance from the quarry to Nan Madol is approximately 10 miles across open ocean and coral reefs. Building rafts capable of carrying 50-ton stones would require massive logs, but Pohnpei's tropical environment doesn't produce trees large enough for such construction. Even if they somehow managed to build adequate rafts, navigating through coral reefs with such heavy loads would be nearly impossible without damaging both the rafts and the precious stone cargo. A second theory suggests overland transport. Proponents argue that the stones were moved using a combination of log rollers, ropes, and massive human labour. they point to similar techniques used in other ancient cultures, like the transport of Easter Island's Moai statues. The basalt columns could have been rolled along predetermined paths, then loaded onto smaller boats for the final water crossing. Yet, this theory faces its own challenges. The terrain between Sokay's rock and the coast is mountainous and covered in dense jungle. Creating a transport route would have required clearing miles of forest and building massive earthworks to level the path. Archaeological surveys have found no evidence of such extensive landscape modification. Moreover, the labour force required would have been enormous. Some estimates suggest thousands of workers over many decades. Recent scientific analysis has provided new insights that complicate both theories. Radiocarbon dating shows that major construction at Nan Madol began around 1180 AD, during the rise of the Sodalur dynasty. Chemical analysis of the basalt stones confirms they came from Sokay's rock, but it also reveals something unexpected. The stones were carefully selected. Only specific types of basalt were used, suggesting the builders had detailed knowledge of rock properties and were choosing materials for specific structural purposes. This leads to a third theory that's gaining attention among researchers. Some archaeologists now propose that the construction was more gradual and methodical than previously thought. Instead of massive stone transport operations, they suggest the builders used smaller, more manageable pieces and employed sophisticated engineering techniques we don't fully understand yet. They point to the precision of the construction. The stones fit together with remarkable accuracy, suggesting advanced planning and possibly unknown lifting techniques. The discovery of extensive underwater structures around Nan Madol adds another layer to the mystery. Archaeologists have found basalt columns on the seafloor, leading some to speculate that parts of the complex were built during periods of lower sea level, or that there were construction accidents that left stones scattered across the ocean floor. This evidence suggests the building process was more complex and possibly more dangerous than any current theory adequately explains. What makes Nan Madol truly unique is not just the mystery of construction, but the precision of the final result. The artificial islands are perfectly positioned to create a complex system of tidal channels that would have provided both defense and practical benefits for daily life. The arrangement suggests not just engineering skill, but sophisticated understanding of ocean dynamics and long-term planning. The debate continues to evolve as new archaeological techniques provide fresh evidence. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed hidden structures beneath the visible ruins, while underwater archaeology is mapping the full extent of the complex. Each new discovery adds pieces to the puzzle, but also raises new questions about the capabilities of ancient Pacific islanders. The Sanxingdui civilization, China. Some of the world's greatest archaeological discoveries happen by accident. A farmer looking for water strikes gold instead of finding a well. A construction worker's shovel hits something that shouldn't be there. But few accidental discoveries have been as shocking as what happened in rural China in 1929, when a simple drainage ditch led to the unearthing of one of the most mysterious civilizations in human history. It was early spring when farmer Yan Daocheng and his son were digging an irrigation channel in their field near Guanghan City in Sichuan province. Their tools hit something hard buried in the mud. Not rocks, but smooth carved objects that gleamed despite centuries underground. What they pulled from that ditch were jade artifacts unlike anything seen before in China. The farmer had no idea he'd just discovered the first traces of the Sanxingdui civilization, a Bronze Age culture that would challenge everything archaeologists thought they knew about ancient China. The jade pieces sat in the farmer's home for years, occasionally shown to visitors but largely forgotten. It wasn't until the 1980s that archaeologists realized the significance of that first discovery. When formal excavations began in 1986, what they found defied all expectations. Two massive sacrificial pits emerged from the earth, filled with thousands of bronze artifacts that looked like nothing else in Chinese archaeology. The 1986 excavation revealed treasures that seemed to come from another world. Bronze masks with bulging eyes and enormous ears, some measuring over 4 feet wide, standing bronze figures with elongated faces and mysterious expressions. Most stunning of all was a bronze sacred tree nearly 13 feet tall, with birds perched on its branches and strange symbols decorating its trunk. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. These weren't primitive artifacts, but sophisticated works of art created by master metalworkers. What made these discoveries so revolutionary wasn't just their beauty, but their complete uniqueness. The bronze masks bore no resemblance to any known Chinese artistic tradition. The faces were otherworldly, some with protruding eyes that seemed to stare into another dimension, others with elaborate decorations that suggested religious or ceremonial significance. The style was so different from contemporaneous Chinese Bronze Age artifacts that some archaeologists initially questioned whether they were even Chinese at all. The excavation work revealed that these weren't random burials but carefully arranged sacrificial deposits. The artifacts had been deliberately broken and burned before being placed in the pits, suggesting complex ritual practices. Elephant tusks, cowrie shells, and jade objects were layered among the bronze pieces, indicating trade connections that stretched across vast distances. The presence of elephant ivory was particularly puzzling. Elephants hadn't lived in this region for thousands of years, suggesting the Sanxingdui people had extensive trade networks reaching into Southeast Asia. Radiocarbon dating placed the artifacts between 1200 and 1000 BCE, making them contemporaneous with China's Shang dynasty. But while Shang bronzes featured familiar Chinese motifs like dragons and phoenixes, Sanxingdui artifacts displayed completely different imagery. The sacred trees, giant masks, and standing figures suggested a civilization with its own distinct religious beliefs and artistic traditions. The archaeological work intensified in the following decades. Excavations revealed that Sanxingdui wasn't just a burial ground, but a major urban centre. The ancient city covered over 12 square kilometres and was surrounded by massive earthen walls. Archaeological surveys found evidence of specialised workshops, residential areas, and a complex water management system. This was clearly the capital of a sophisticated kingdom that had somehow vanished from historical records. The most dramatic discoveries came recently. In 2019, archaeologists using advanced ground-penetrating radar identified 6 new sacrificial pits adjacent to the original finds. Excavations beginning in 2020 revealed over 500 new artifacts, including fragments of what appears to be the largest gold mask ever found in China. The new discoveries included bronze vessels with previously unknown decorative patterns, jade objects in unique shapes, and fragments of silk, the earliest silk textiles ever found in southwest China. Current theories about Sanxingdui are still evolving. Most archaeologists now believe it was the capital of the ancient Shu kingdom, mentioned in later Chinese historical texts but never properly located. The Shu people, according to these ancient sources, were skilled bronze workers who ruled a prosperous kingdom in what is now Sichuan province. The archaeological evidence seems to support this connection, but many questions remain unanswered. The civilization's sudden disappearance around 1000 BCE remains one of archaeology's great mysteries. The sacrificial pits appear to have been the site of massive ritual destructions, where valuable artifacts were deliberately broken and buried. Some theories suggest this was done during a political crisis, possibly an invasion or internal collapse. Others propose it was part of a planned relocation, with the most sacred objects ceremonially buried before the population moved to a new location. Recent scientific analysis has provided new insights into Sanxingdui's technological achievements. Isotope analysis of the bronze artifacts reveals sophisticated alloy compositions that demonstrate advanced metallurgical knowledge. The bronze casting techniques used to create the massive masks and sacred trees required technological skills that were among the most advanced in the ancient world. Chemical analysis of the jade objects shows they came from sources hundreds of miles away, confirming the extensive trade networks that connected Sanxingdui to distant regions. The ongoing excavations continue to yield surprises. In 2024, archaeologists discovered what appears to be a jade and stone workshop, complete with unfinished artifacts and production tools. This finding provides the first direct evidence of how Sanxingdui artisans created their masterpieces. The workshop dates to over 3,400 years ago, pushing back the timeline of sophisticated craft production at the site. DNA analysis of human remains found at the site suggests the Sanxingdui people were genetically distinct from other contemporary Chinese populations, supporting the idea that they represented a unique cultural group. Their distinctive artistic style, advanced technology, and sudden disappearance continue to puzzle researchers who are working to understand how such a sophisticated civilization could have developed in apparent isolation and then vanish so completely. The Maya collapse. Imagine a civilization at its absolute peak. Cities stretching as far as the eye can see, filled with towering pyramids that pierced the jungle canopy, markets bustling with traders carrying goods from across Mesoamerica, skilled astronomers tracking celestial movements with precision that rivals modern calculations. This was the Maya world during the Classic period, from 250 to 900 AD, a time when Maya civilization reached heights that wouldn't be matched in the Americas for centuries. The Maya weren't just another ancient society, they were mathematical geniuses who invented the concept of zero independently from the old world. They developed the most accurate calendar system in human history, predicting eclipses thousands of years into the future. Their cities, Tikal, Palenque, Caracol, Calakmul, were engineering marvels that supported populations larger than many European cities of the time. Recent studies suggest the Maya lowlands may have supported between 7 to 11 million people at their peak, making it one of the most densely populated regions in the ancient world. But then something unprecedented happened. Around 900 AD, this magnificent civilization began to collapse. Not gradually, not through conquest by foreign armies, but through a mysterious abandonment that left archaeologists puzzled for over a century. Within the span of just a few generations, the great Maya cities were empty, the ball courts fell silent, the elaborate royal ceremonies ended, jungle vines began to reclaim the stone temples that had dominated the landscape for over 6 centuries. To understand how shocking this collapse was, we need to grasp what the Maya had achieved. The agricultural system was a masterpiece of environmental engineering. They had transformed vast areas of jungle into productive farmland, using techniques that modern science is only beginning to appreciate. Raised fields in wetlands, terraced hillsides, and sophisticated irrigation systems supported millions of people in an environment that many had considered unsuitable for dense populations. The Maya political system was equally complex. Rather than a single empire, the Maya world consisted of dozens of city-states, each ruled by divine kings who claimed descent from the gods. These rulers waged elaborate wars, formed shifting alliances, and competed for prestige through massive building projects. The hieroglyphic texts carved on their monuments tell stories of royal marriages, military victories, and religious ceremonies that bound together a civilization spread across modern-day Mexico, Guatemala, Belize, and Honduras. Yet by 900 AD, the inscribed monuments stopped. The last dated Maya monument in the southern lowlands was carved in 909 AD at Tunina. After that, silence. The great cities that had thrived for centuries were abandoned one by one. Archaeological evidence shows that this wasn't a gradual decline, but a relatively rapid collapse that happened within a period of about 150 years. The mystery deepens when we consider that the Maya collapse wasn't universal. While the cities of the southern lowlands were abandoned, Maya civilization continued to flourish in the northern Yucatan for several more centuries. Cities like Chichen Itza and Mayapan rose to prominence just as Tikal and Palenque were being swallowed by the jungle. This suggests that whatever caused the collapse was specific to the southern region, not a civilization-wide catastrophe. Modern research has revealed multiple factors that likely contributed to the collapse. Climate studies show that the Maya heartland experienced a series of severe droughts between 800 and 1000 AD. These weren't ordinary dry seasons, but prolonged periods of reduced rainfall that would have devastated the agricultural systems that supported the dense urban populations. Lake sediment cores from across the region show evidence of dramatic decreases in water levels during this period. Environmental degradation played a crucial role. The Maya had transformed their landscapes so thoroughly that they had created an ecological house of cards. Deforestation for building materials and agricultural land had eliminated much of the natural forest cover. Without trees to retain moisture and prevent erosion, the landscape became increasingly vulnerable to drought. Archaeological evidence from sites like Copan shows clear signs of environmental stress, including soil depletion and watershed degradation. Warfare intensified during the Terminal Classic period as resources became scarce. The elaborate inscriptions from this time tell increasingly desperate stories of conflicts between city-states. Competition for dwindling resources led to a breakdown in the trade networks that had sustained Maya civilization for centuries. As agricultural productivity declined and trade routes collapsed, the economic foundation that supported the Maya elite began to crumble. Population pressure may have been the underlying factor that made the Maya vulnerable to these other stresses. Recent archaeological surveys suggest that Maya population density in some areas reached levels that were close to the carrying capacity of the land. When drought struck, there was no buffer. The agricultural system that had seemed so successful suddenly couldn't support the millions of people who depended on it. The Maya collapse fits into a broader pattern of civilizational cycles that archaeologists have identified around the world. Complex societies often experience periods of rapid growth, followed by equally rapid collapse when they exceed their environmental or social carrying capacity. The Maya collapse occurred during a time of global climate change and social upheaval that affected civilizations from Europe to Asia. What makes the Maya collapse particularly significant is what it reveals about the relationship between human societies and their environment. The Maya had created one of the most sophisticated agricultural systems in the ancient world, yet it proved vulnerable to climate change and overexploitation. Their story offers insights into how even the most advanced civilizations can face sudden collapse when environmental and social stresses combine. Derinkuyu underground city, Turkey. When modern engineers first encountered Derinkuyu, they faced a puzzle that challenged everything they thought they knew about ancient construction. How do you scientifically analyze a structure that defies conventional engineering principles? An underground city that housed 20,000 people, extending 18 levels deep into solid volcanic rock, with a ventilation system so sophisticated it still functions perfectly after 1,500 years. The answer required deploying every tool in the modern archaeological toolkit. The scientific investigation of Derinkuyu began with ground-penetrating radar surveys in the 1990s. Teams of geophysicists slowly moved their equipment across the surface above the known entrances, sending electromagnetic pulses deep into the earth. What they found was staggering. The underground complex was far larger than anyone had imagined. The radar revealed a honeycomb of chambers, tunnels, and vertical shafts extending in all directions, some reaching depths of over 85 meters below the surface. But radar could only provide shadowy outlines. To truly understand the structure, researchers needed three-dimensional laser scanning technology. Teams descended into the narrow passages carrying portable LiDAR units, devices that fire millions of laser pulses per second to create precise digital maps. The scanning process was painstaking. Each chamber, each tunnel, each carved niche had to be documented with millimeter precision. The resulting 3D models revealed architectural details that had been invisible to previous generations of archaeologists. The structural analysis that followed challenged fundamental assumptions about ancient engineering capabilities. Using finite element modeling software, engineers calculated the load-bearing capacity of the carved rock chambers. They discovered that the ancient builders had instinctively understood principles of structural mechanics that weren't formally described until the 19th century. The placement of load-bearing pillars, the arch shapes of doorways, the distribution of weight, everything followed optimal engineering principles. Geotechnical investigations revealed the genius of the location choice. The city was carved into a specific type of volcanic rock called tuff, formed from compressed volcanic ash. This material had the perfect properties for underground construction, soft enough to carve with simple tools, but hardening when exposed to air. Core samples analysed in modern laboratories showed that the tuff had the compressive strength of 15 to 20 megapascals, more than adequate to support the massive underground structure. The ventilation system became the focus of the most intensive scientific study. Using computational fluid dynamics modelling, researchers mapped the airflow patterns throughout the complex. They discovered that the ancient engineers had created a sophisticated climate control system using natural convection principles. Fresh air entered through more than 50 ventilation shafts, with the deepest shaft extending 55 meters to the surface. The warmer air from the lower levels rose through these shafts, creating a natural circulation system that provided fresh air to every chamber. To test the ventilation system's effectiveness, researchers used tracer gases and air quality monitors throughout the complex. They found that even at the deepest levels, oxygen levels remained adequate for human habitation, and carbon dioxide never reached dangerous concentrations. The ancient builders had somehow calculated the exact number and placement of shafts needed to ventilate a space for 20,000 people. a feat that would challenge modern HVAC engineers. Dating the construction phases required multiple scientific techniques. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials found in sealed chambers provided terminus antiquem dates, the latest possible construction times. Thermoluminescence dating of ceramic fragments helped establish when different sections were carved. The results showed that Derinkuyu was built in phases, with the earliest sections dating to the 7th century AD during the Byzantine period. Archaeobotanical analysis of plant remains found in ancient storage chambers revealed the sophisticated agricultural support system. Microscopic examination of soil samples showed evidence of grain storage, wine production, and even livestock keeping in the underground spaces. Chemical analysis of residues on storage vessels identified crops that had been stored underground, wheat, barley, and legumes that could sustain the population during long periods of isolation. The water system investigation required hydrological engineering analysis. Using flow rate measurements and chemical analysis of the water sources, researchers determined that the ancient builders had tapped into multiple aquifers. The main water source was a well that extends 55 meters deep, but additional water came from carefully engineered collection systems that captured groundwater seepage. The water quality analysis showed that the ancient water sources were remarkably pure, with mineral content ideal for human consumption. Modern security analysis revealed the defensive sophistication of the design. Using computer modelling, researchers analysed the effectiveness of the rolling stone doors, narrow passages, and dead-end tunnels. They found that the layout created natural choke points that would have been nearly impossible for attackers to breach. The ventilation shafts doubled as communication systems, allowing coordinated defence of the entire complex. Recent investigations using ground-penetrating radar have revealed that Derinkuyu connects to other underground cities through a network of tunnels extending for kilometres. The full extent of this subterranean network is still being mapped, with new sections discovered regularly. Some tunnels are 8 kilometres long, connecting to the nearby underground city of Göbekli. The most challenging aspect of the scientific investigation has been understanding the construction process itself. Toolmark analysis on carved surfaces reveals that the ancient builders used simple iron tools, yet achieved precision that rivals modern construction. Experimental archaeology projects have attempted to replicate the carving techniques, but modern recreations take far longer than the historical construction timeline suggests. Easter Island Moai statues. Few archaeological mysteries have captured the public imagination quite like the giant heads of Easter Island. They've starred in Hollywood movies, inspired countless documentaries, and become the poster children for every conspiracy theory about ancient civilizations. From the 1968 book Chariots of the Gods to the History Channel's Ancient Aliens series, the Moai have been presented as evidence of extraterrestrial visitation, lost super-civilizations, and impossible engineering feats. The iconic image of these stone faces gazing mysteriously across the Pacific has become shorthand for the unexplained, the mysterious, the otherworldly. Popular culture has woven an almost mythical narrative around these statues. They're portrayed as impossible puzzles left by a vanished civilization, too advanced for primitive island dwellers to have created. Movies like Rapa Nui depicted the statues as requiring massive armies of workers and causing environmental collapse. Television shows have suggested everything from anti-gravity technology to alien intervention. The internet is filled with theories about their mysterious purpose, their impossible construction, and their unexplained transport across the island. But here's where popular culture and archaeological reality part ways dramatically. The Moai aren't mysterious alien artifacts. They're the well-documented religious and cultural expressions of the Rapa Nui people created between 1250 and 1500 AD. Archaeological evidence shows exactly how, when, and why they were built, and the story is far more remarkable than any science fiction theory. The archaeological record tells us that the Moai were carved at a single quarry site called Rano Raraku, using stone tools called toki that archaeologists have found in abundance. The statues weren't mysterious heads floating in the landscape, they're full-body figures, with most of their bodies buried by centuries of soil accumulation. Excavations have revealed that the buried portions contain intricate carvings, petroglyphs, and even ceremonial loincloths carved in stone. The myth of the giant heads was created by early European visitors who only saw the portions above ground. When archaeologists began systematic excavations in the 20th century, they discovered that nearly all the Moai have bodies extending deep underground. Some stand over 30 feet tall when fully exposed, making them among the largest stone sculptures in the world. But they're sculptures created by human hands, not alien technology. The popular narrative of environmental collapse caused by statue construction has also been challenged by modern research. Archaeological evidence shows that the Rapa Nui society was thriving during the Moai construction period. The island supported a population of 10,000 to 15,000 people who had developed sophisticated agricultural systems, including rock gardens that are still visible today. The environmental challenges came later, largely due to European contact, disease, and the introduction of rats that devastated the island's ecosystem. Perhaps the most persistent myth involves the mysterious transport of the statues. Popular culture has suggested everything from levitation to alien spacecraft, but archaeological experiments have solved this puzzle definitively. Researchers Carl Lippo and Terry Hunt demonstrated that the Moai could be walked upright using a rocking motion controlled by ropes. Their experiments with concrete replicas showed that a small team could move a 10-ton statue across the island using only ropes and human coordination. This walking theory explains numerous archaeological puzzles. The statues found along the ancient roads are predominantly the tall, narrow ones best suited for this transport method. Many of these road statues were found fallen forward, exactly as they would land if they toppled during transport. The oral traditions of the Rapa Nui people even describe the statues as having walked to their positions, a detail that archaeologists initially dismissed as mythology but now recognise as historical memory. The contrast between myth and reality extends to the statue's purpose. Rather than being mysterious alien markers or ancient astronomical computers, the Moai served as ancestral figures watching over the island's communities. Each statue was individually carved to represent specific ancestors, which explains why they each have unique facial features despite their stylistic similarities. They were placed on ceremonial platforms called ahu, which served as focal points for religious ceremonies and community gatherings. Archaeological analysis has revealed the sophisticated social organisation required for Moai construction. The project required specialists, master carvers, transport teams, and skilled platform builders. The different statue styles correspond to different time periods and likely different family groups or clans. Far from being the work of a mysterious lost civilization, the Moai represent the pinnacle of Polynesian stone carving traditions that can be traced across the Pacific. The true significance of Easter Island goes far beyond the sensationalized versions popularized by media. The Moai represent one of humanity's most remarkable achievements in isolation. A small population on the world's most remote inhabited island, creating monumental art that rivals anything produced by continental civilizations. The engineering knowledge required to quarry, carve, transport and erect these massive statues demonstrates the sophisticated technical abilities of Polynesian seafarers. Recent archaeological discoveries continue to enhance our understanding of this remarkable achievement. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed hundreds of additional statues still buried around the island. Chemical analysis of stone tools has mapped the complex trade networks that supplied resources for statue construction. Dating techniques have provided a detailed timeline of when different statues were carved and erected. Cahokia, North America. Long before European explorers claimed to have discovered the New World, North America was home to sophisticated civilizations that built cities, developed complex trade networks, and created monumental architecture. Between 1000 and 1400 AD, during Europe's medieval period, the heart of North American civilization beat strongest in what is now Illinois. This was the era of the Mississippian culture, and at its centre stood Cahokia, a sprawling metropolis that was larger than medieval London and wouldn't be surpassed in size by any North American city until Philadelphia in the 1780s. The Mississippian period, spanning roughly 1000 to 1500 AD, represented the pinnacle of pre-Columbian civilization in North America. It was an era of agricultural intensification, when Native American societies across the eastern United States developed sophisticated farming techniques that could support dense populations. Maize agriculture, combined with beans and squash, created the foundation for urban centers that rivaled anything in the contemporary world. The Mississippian peoples built their societies around powerful chiefdoms, complex religious systems, and extensive trade networks that connected communities from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. Within this flourishing world, Cahokia emerged as something unprecedented, North America's first true city. By 1100 AD, at its peak, Cahokia housed between 15,000 to 20,000 people within its urban core, with perhaps 50,000 more living in the surrounding Metropolitan area. The city sprawled across 6 square miles and featured over 120 earthen mounds, including Monk's Mound, the largest prehistoric earthen construction in the Americas. Standing 100 feet tall and covering 14 acres at its base, Monk's Mound was larger than the Great Pyramid of Giza and served as the ceremonial and political centre of a complex society. Yet by 1400 AD, this magnificent city was abandoned. The mystery of Cahokia's disappearance becomes even more puzzling when we consider the broader context of medieval North America. While European cities were struggling with plague, warfare, and social upheaval, Cahokia had achieved a level of urban sophistication that wouldn't be seen again in North America for centuries. The city featured planned neighborhoods, sophisticated water management systems, and a central plaza that could accommodate thousands of people for religious and political gatherings. The abandonment of Cahokia fits into a broader pattern of Mississippian decline that began in the 13th century. Archaeological evidence shows that many Mississippian centers across the eastern United States began to contract around this time, with populations dispersing from large urban centers into smaller, more scattered settlements. This wasn't a unique collapse, but part of a continent-wide transformation that affected Native American societies from the Great Plains to the Atlantic coast. Climate change appears to have played a crucial role in this transformation. The medieval warm period, which had facilitated the agricultural expansion that supported Mississippian civilization, began to give way to the Little Ice Age around 1300 AD. Paleoclimate data shows that the Midwest experienced increasingly severe droughts and floods during this period, making the intensive agriculture that supported dense populations increasingly difficult to maintain. Recent scientific studies have provided new insights into Cahokia's environmental challenges. Analysis of sediment cores from nearby lakes reveals that the city's inhabitants had cleared vast areas of surrounding forest for agriculture and construction, leading to increased erosion and flooding. The archaeological record shows evidence of periodic flooding events that would have devastated crops and made parts of the city uninhabitable. The social and political structure of Mississippian chiefdoms may have made them particularly vulnerable to environmental stress. These societies were built around powerful chiefs who controlled surplus agricultural production and managed elaborate redistribution systems. When environmental challenges reduced agricultural yields, the entire social system could collapse rapidly. Archaeological evidence from Cahokia's later periods shows increasing signs of social stress. Fortifications around the city centre, evidence of violence, and a breakdown in the craft specialization that had characterized the city's golden age. The abandonment of Cahokia also reflects broader changes in Native American society that were occurring across the continent. The period between 1300 and 1400 AD saw significant population movements, the development of new political systems, and changes in trade networks that would shape the indigenous societies that Europeans encountered after 1500. The descendants of Cahokia's inhabitants didn't disappear but dispersed across the Midwest, carrying their cultural traditions and knowledge to new communities. The broader implications of Cahokia's story extend beyond North American history. The city's abandonment occurred during a period of global climate change that affected civilizations worldwide. From the collapse of the Anasazi in the southwest to the end of the medieval warm period in Europe, the 13th and 14th centuries saw widespread social and environmental upheaval. Cahokia's fate illustrates how even the most sophisticated pre-industrial societies remained vulnerable to environmental change and social stress. The Sea Peoples. The mystery began with a wall. In 1859, French archaeologist Auguste Mariette stood before the massive stone walls of Medinet Habu, the mortuary temple of Pharaoh Ramesses III near Luxor, Egypt. Carved into the stone were hieroglyphs that told an extraordinary story, a tale of mysterious invaders from across the sea who had brought chaos to the ancient world. But these weren't ordinary hieroglyphs. They described foreign warriors with feathered headdresses, horned helmets, and strange round shields, people unlike any the Egyptians had encountered before. Marriott was looking at the first clear evidence of what scholars would later call the Sea Peoples, a confederation of maritime raiders who appeared in the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BCE and then vanished from history almost as mysteriously as they had appeared. The hieroglyphic inscriptions at Medinet Habu provided names for these enigmatic groups: the Peleset, Djeka, Shekelesh, Danuna, and Weshesh. But the inscriptions raised more questions than they answered. Who were these people? Where did they come from? And what happened to the civilizations they encountered? Early archaeological work in the late 19th and early 20th centuries began to piece together a broader picture of destruction across the eastern Mediterranean around 1200 BCE. Excavations at sites like Troy, Mycenae, and later Ugarit revealed thick destruction layers dating to this period. Ancient cities that had thrived for centuries showed evidence of violent destruction: collapsed walls, burned buildings, and hastily buried treasures. The timing matched the Egyptian accounts of the Sea People's attacks, suggesting these maritime raiders were connected to one of history's greatest civilizational collapses. The breakthrough came in 1929, when French archaeologist Claude Schaeffer began excavating the ancient city of Ugarit on the Syrian coast. What his team found was a Bronze Age city frozen in its final moments. Cuneiform tablets scattered on palace floors told of desperate letters sent to allies begging for help against seaborne attackers. One tablet, addressed to the King of Cyprus, read, "My father, now the ships of the enemy have come. They have been setting fire to my cities and have done harm to the land." The city had been destroyed so suddenly that residents fled without their most precious possessions. Archaeological evidence from across the Mediterranean began to reveal the scale of this Bronze Age collapse. At Pylos in Greece, Linear B tablets described coastal watchtowers being established to watch for seaborne raiders. At Enkomi in Cyprus, excavators found evidence of two destruction phases in the 12th century BCE. Even distant sites like Hattusa, the Hittite capital in modern Turkey, showed signs of abandonment around the same period. The Sea Peoples weren't just raiding Egypt, they were part of a Mediterranean-wide crisis. But identifying the Sea Peoples archaeologically proved challenging. Unlike other ancient peoples who left distinctive pottery styles or architectural signatures, the Sea Peoples seemed to blend into the archaeological record. The Egyptian reliefs at Medinet Habu showed them using ships with distinctive birdhead prows and fighting with particular weapon types, but finding these material signatures in excavated sites remained difficult. The most promising lead came from the Peleset, one of the Sea Peoples groups named in Egyptian sources. Many scholars connected them to the Philistines mentioned in biblical texts, who appeared in the southern Levant around 1200 BCE. Excavations at Philistine sites like Ashkelon, Ekron, and Gath revealed a distinctive material culture that appeared suddenly in the archaeological record. Aegean-style pottery, new architectural techniques, and different dietary practices, including the consumption of pork. Recent scientific advances have revolutionized Sea Peoples research. In 2016, archaeologists discovered a Philistine cemetery at Ashkelon, providing the first opportunity to study Sea Peoples genetics directly. DNA analysis published in 2019 showed that early Iron Age individuals from Ashkelon had significant European ancestry, particularly from southern Europe, confirming that at least some Sea Peoples groups originated outside the eastern Mediterranean. Isotope analysis of teeth from the Ashkelon burials provided additional evidence for their foreign origins. The chemical signatures in the tooth enamel, which forms in childhood, didn't match the local environment, indicating these individuals had grown up elsewhere before arriving in the Levant. Combined with pottery analysis showing Aegean influences, the evidence points to origins in the Greek world or surrounding regions. However, modern research has complicated the simple picture of Sea Peoples as destroyers of civilization. Detailed analysis of destruction layers shows that many sites were abandoned gradually rather than destroyed violently. Climate data indicates that the eastern Mediterranean experienced severe droughts around 1200 BCE, which may have triggered population movements and economic collapse independent of any military invasions. Current research focuses on understanding the Sea Peoples as part of broader systems collapse rather than its primary cause. New excavations at sites like Telmikna Ekron are revealing how Sea Peoples groups established new societies in the aftermath of Bronze Age collapse, bringing technological innovations like ironworking and new agricultural techniques. The Antikythera mechanism. When scientists first encountered the corroded bronze fragments pulled from a Mediterranean shipwreck in 1901, they faced an unprecedented challenge. How do you investigate a 2000-year-old machine that's more complex than anything that should have existed in the ancient world? The answer required deploying the most advanced scientific imaging techniques available, transforming fragments of corroded metal into readable blueprints of humanity's oldest known computer. The scientific investigation of the Antikythera mechanism began in earnest in 2005 with the launch of the Antikythera Mechanism Research Project. The challenge was immediate. The bronze fragments were so heavily corroded and mineralized that traditional archaeological methods couldn't penetrate the surface. The team needed to see inside the mechanism without damaging it, requiring non-invasive techniques that could reveal the intricate gear systems hidden beneath centuries of marine incrustation. The breakthrough came with high-resolution X-ray computed tomography. Using a specially designed 450 kV microfocus X-ray system, researchers could penetrate the corroded bronze and create detailed three-dimensional images of the internal structure. The CT scans revealed what visual inspection had missed, a complex arrangement of at least 37 bronze gears, some no larger than coins, precisely cut with teeth that meshed with mathematical precision. But CT scanning was only the beginning. The fragments contained thousands of tiny Greek letters carved into the bronze, creating what amounted to an ancient instruction manual. These inscriptions were invisible to the naked eye, buried under corrosion and mineral deposits. To read them, researchers employed reflectance transformation imaging, a technique that captures how light interacts with surfaces from multiple angles. By combining dozens of photographs taken under different lighting conditions, RTI revealed text that had been unreadable for over a century. The investigation process required painstaking analysis of each gear fragment. Researchers used digital calipers to measure gear tooth spacing with micrometer precision, then used polynomial curve fitting to determine the original number of teeth on damaged gears. The gear ratios that emerged from this analysis matched known ancient Greek astronomical periods with stunning accuracy. Ratios that encoded the 19-year Metonic cycle, the 76-year Calippic cycle, and the complex motions of the known planets. Advanced imaging revealed that the mechanism was far more sophisticated than initially thought. The CT scan showed evidence of differential gearing, a technique not seen again until medieval Islamic mechanical devices 1,000 years later. The gear trains could model the elliptical orbit of the Moon, accounting for its varying speed throughout its orbit, a level of astronomical knowledge that historians didn't think existed in ancient Greece. The scientific analysis extended beyond mechanical engineering to include metallurgical investigation. X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy revealed that the bronze contained specific tin and lead ratios that were optimized for gear cutting, showing the ancient craftsmen understood metallurgy at a sophisticated level. The analysis also revealed tool marks that provided insights into ancient manufacturing techniques. The gears were cut using a form of primitive machine lathe, not hand-carved as initially assumed. Recent advances in 3D visualization have allowed researchers to create virtual reconstructions of the complete mechanism. Using the gear ratios extracted from CT analysis, computer models now demonstrate how the device functioned as an astronomical calculator. Turn the input crank and the mechanism displays the positions of the Sun, Moon, and known planets, predicts eclipses, and tracks various ancient Greek calendar systems simultaneously. The investigation revealed the mechanism's true scope through inscription analysis. RTI imaging uncovered a detailed user's manual describing how the device displayed lunar eclipses, solar eclipses, and the synodic periods of all 5 planets known to ancient astronomers. The text revealed that the mechanism could predict eclipses decades in advance, and displayed this information on both front and back dials with remarkable precision. However, significant scientific limitations remain in understanding the device completely. Approximately 2/3 of the original mechanism is missing, lost to the sea or destroyed over time. The missing portions likely contained additional gear trains for planetary motions that researchers can only reconstruct theoretically. The The exact method used to calculate the complex gear ratios also remains unclear. Ancient Greek mathematical texts don't describe the advanced techniques needed to design such precise mechanical calculations. Modern research continues to push the boundaries of what the surviving fragments can reveal. Ultra-high-resolution CT scanning is revealing gear tooth details that weren't visible in earlier scans, while advanced software is helping to reconstruct missing gear trains based on mechanical constraints and astronomical requirements. Each new imaging technique provides additional pieces to the puzzle. The scientific investigation has also revealed the mechanism's historical context through dating analysis. The astronomical periods encoded in the gear ratios match observations from ancient roads, suggesting the device was designed for use at that specific latitude. The eclipse predictions begin in 205 BCE, providing a probable construction date that aligns with the Hellenistic period's peak of mechanical and astronomical innovation, the Voynich manuscript. What if you discovered a book that no one could read? Not because it's in an ancient language, but because it appears to be written in a script that has never existed anywhere else in human history. This is the central mystery of the Voynich manuscript, a medieval codex containing over 240 pages of text written in an unknown alphabet, accompanied by bizarre illustrations of plants that don't exist, astronomical diagrams that make no sense, and naked women in green pools connected by elaborate pipe systems. For over a century, the world's best codebreakers, linguists and computer scientists have failed to crack its secrets. The first major theory is that the manuscript represents a lost natural language, perhaps a dialect that disappeared from history or a constructed language created for a specific purpose. Proponents of this theory point to statistical analysis showing that Voynichese, as the script is called, follows patterns typical of natural languages. The text obeys Zipf's law, where word frequency follows a predictable mathematical distribution found in all known languages. Computational studies have found that the manuscript's entropy levels match those of natural languages, rather than random gibberish or simple ciphers. Recent research by Yale linguists has strengthened the natural language theory. They've identified grammatical structures within Voynichese that appear consistent with agglutinative languages, where words are formed by combining smaller meaningful units. The text shows evidence of morphological patterns. Certain letter combinations appear at the beginnings of words, while others consistently appear at the ends, suggesting prefix and suffix systems. Computer analysis has also revealed that different sections of the manuscript use slightly different vocabularies, which would be expected if the text discussed different topics in a real language. However, the natural language theory faces significant challenges. If Voynichese were a real language, it would be unlike any other language known to linguistics. The script uses only 25 different characters, far fewer than most alphabets, yet creates thousands of different words. The letter combinations follow extremely rigid rules that seem artificial rather than natural. Some letter sequences appear far too frequently to be realistic. Imagine if every third word in English ended with the same 4 letters. The second major theory proposes that the manuscript is an elaborate hoax, possibly created to deceive potential buyers who collected rare books. Computer scientist Gordon Rugg demonstrated in 2004 that text resembling Voynichese could be generated using 16th century cryptographic tools called Cardan grills, tables with movable windows that could produce pseudo-language by combining syllable fragments. According to this theory, the manuscript was created as a medieval con game, designed to look mysterious and valuable while actually being meaningless. The hoax theory gained support from historical context. The manuscript appeared in the possession of Holy Roman Emperor Rudolf II, who was known for collecting curiosities and was frequently targeted by confidence artists. The elaborate illustrations could have been designed to make the book appear more valuable and mysterious. Carbon dating places the vellum in the early 15th century, but this doesn't necessarily mean the text wasn't added later by someone attempting to create a fraudulent ancient document. Yet the hoax theory has its own problems. Creating the manuscript would have required enormous effort and expense. High-quality vellum wasn't cheap in medieval times, and the consistent application of mysterious text across 240 pages would have taken months or years to complete. The illustrations, while strange, show sophisticated knowledge of medieval artistic conventions and botanical illustration techniques. Most importantly, statistical analysis suggests the text is more complex than what could easily be generated by simple mechanical methods like grills. A third theory emerged in recent years proposing that the manuscript is a medical treatise written in abbreviated Latin, with the strange appearance resulting from an extreme form of medieval shorthand. In 2017, Nicholas Gibbs claimed the text was a compilation of women's health remedies, with the abbreviations making it appear incomprehensible to modern readers unfamiliar with medieval medical notation systems. The abbreviation theory attempts to explain both the manuscript's medical-looking illustrations and its apparent linguistic properties. Medieval medical texts often use complex abbreviation systems to save precious writing space, and women's health remedies were sometimes written in coded language to protect trade secrets. The theory suggests that what appears to be an unknown language is actually heavily abbreviated Latin that follows forgotten medieval conventions. However, linguistic experts have found little evidence supporting the abbreviation theory. Attempts to decode specific passages using medieval Latin abbreviations have failed to produce coherent text. The letter patterns in Voynich don't match known abbreviation systems, and the statistical properties of the text are inconsistent with abbreviated Latin. Modern computational approaches continue to generate new theories. Machine learning algorithms trained on the manuscript have suggested it might represent a constructed language with artificial grammar rules, or possibly an early form of encryption that combines multiple ciphering techniques. Some researchers propose it could be a proto-language that influenced later linguistic developments, while others suggest it represents a form of glossolalia, religious speaking in tongues, that was systematically recorded. The Copper Scroll. Sometimes, the most extraordinary discoveries happen in the most ordinary moments. On March 14, 1952, French archaeologist Henri de Contenson was conducting a systematic survey of Cave 3 at Qumran, part of the ongoing search for more Dead Sea Scrolls following the sensational discoveries of the late 1940s. Working in the dim light at the back of the cave, his team spotted something unusual tucked into a niche in the rock wall. 2 rolls of heavily corroded metal, green with age, sitting one on top of the other. At first glance, these copper rolls didn't seem particularly significant. Unlike the leather and papyrus scrolls that had made headlines around the world, these metal objects were too corroded to read and too fragile to unroll. The team carefully extracted them and transported them to the Palestine Archaeological Museum in Jerusalem, where they joined a growing collection of scroll fragments awaiting analysis. But what lay hidden beneath the corrosion would prove to be unlike anything else in the Dead Sea Scrolls collection. The real discovery began 4 years later, when the decision was made to open the copper rolls. The metal was so brittle that conventional unrolling was impossible. Any attempt would have shattered the ancient copper into fragments. In 1956, the scrolls were transported to Manchester University, where mechanical engineer H. Wright Baker had developed a specialised machine for cutting the rolls into strips. Using a precision saw with a cutting wheel just 3 mm thick, Baker carefully sliced through the copper, revealing the Hebrew text that had been hidden for nearly 2,000 years. What John Allegro and his team found when they read the freshly cut strips was extraordinary. Instead of religious texts, biblical commentaries, or community rules like the other Dead Sea Scrolls, the Copper Scroll contained a detailed inventory of hidden treasure. 64 locations were listed, describing caches of gold, silver, and precious artifacts hidden throughout the Judean wilderness. The quantities were staggering. The scroll mentioned over 200 tons of gold and silver, making it the largest treasure hoard described in ancient literature. Archaeological analysis revealed that the Copper Scroll was unique among the Dead Sea Scrolls in multiple ways. Carbon dating and paleographic analysis placed its creation between 25 and 100 CE, making it contemporaneous with the other scrolls. But unlike the carefully prepared leather and papyrus of religious texts, this document was hammered from sheets of copper with a high tin content, making it more like bronze. The Hebrew text was written in a style that differed significantly from the literary Hebrew of other scrolls, using more colloquial language and technical terms. The locations described in the scroll presented archaeologists with a tantalizing puzzle. The text provided specific geographic references, distances measured in cubits, landmarks like pools and tombs, and place names that could potentially be identified. Some entries were remarkably detailed. In the cistern, which is below the rampart on the east side, in a place hollowed out of the rock, 600 bars of silver. Others were more cryptic, referring to locations in the third course of stones or under the hill facing east. John Allegro became obsessed with finding the treasure and launched several expeditions to the Judean desert in the late 1950s and early 1960s. His team followed the scroll's directions, searching for the described landmarks and attempting to identify the hidden caches. They excavated numerous sites, from ancient cisterns to rock formations, but found no trace of the massive treasure hoards described in the copper text. The failure of these expeditions led many scholars to question whether the treasure had ever existed at all. Current archaeological research has taken a more systematic approach to understanding the copper scroll. Modern scholars have used geographic information systems and satellite imagery to map the locations described in the text, revealing that most references cluster around the Jerusalem area and the northern Dead Sea region. This geographic focus has led to new theories about the scroll's origins and purpose. Recent linguistic analysis has provided fresh insights into the document's nature. The Hebrew dialect used in the scroll shows characteristics of the spoken language of 1st century Palestine, particularly the Jerusalem region. The technical terminology includes specific architectural and topographical terms that suggest the writers had intimate knowledge of the temple complex and its surroundings. Some scholars now believe the scroll may describe treasures hidden from the Jerusalem temple before its destruction in 70 CE. Archaeological investigation has also focused on the scroll's physical properties. Metallurgical analysis revealed that the copper sheets were manufactured using techniques consistent with 1st century metalworking, but the decision to use copper rather than leather or papyrus remains puzzling. The durability of metal would have made it ideal for preserving information about hidden treasures over long periods, but the expense of copper sheets would have made this an extremely costly way to record information. The discovery context continues to puzzle researchers. Unlike other Dead Sea Scrolls, which were found in jars or wrapped in linen, the copper scroll was simply placed in a niche, already partially deteriorated. This suggests it may have been deposited at a different time or under different circumstances than the other scrolls. Some scholars propose it was hidden by people fleeing Jerusalem during the First Jewish Revolt, while others suggest it may have been a working document used by temple officials, Roman dodecahedrons. In the age of viral archaeology, few ancient artifacts have captured online attention quite like Roman dodecahedrons. These mysterious 12-sided bronze objects regularly flood social media feeds, inspiring YouTube videos with millions of views and Reddit threads filled with wild theories. The internet loves a good mystery, and dodecahedrons deliver. They're photogenic, puzzling, and perfectly sized for clickbait headlines. Popular culture has transformed them into symbols of ancient sophistication, with theories ranging from advanced surveying instruments to alien technology, making them the archaeological equivalent of a modern meme. The online fascination has spawned countless amateur theories. Video creators propose they were ancient multi-tools, cosmic calculators, or even time travel devices. Social media posts regularly claim they're evidence of lost Roman technology that was somehow more advanced than modern engineering. Pinterest boards collect dozens of dodecahedron images alongside captions about mysterious ancient wisdom and technologies archaeologists can't explain. The objects have become shorthand for the idea that ancient civilizations possessed secret knowledge that modern science has forgotten. But the archaeological reality tells a very different story. Since the first documented discovery in 1739 near Aston, England, approximately 130 Roman dodecahedrons have been found across northwestern Europe. These aren't scattered randomly across the Roman Empire. They cluster specifically in regions that correspond to modern-day Britain, Netherlands, Germany, and parts of France. Most date from the 2nd to 4th centuries AD, during the height of Roman occupation in these northern territories. The physical evidence paints a picture far more mundane than internet theories suggest. Most dodecahedrons are between 4 and 11 centimeters in diameter, cast in bronze using standard Roman metalworking techniques. They feature 12 pentagonal faces with circular holes of varying sizes and small knobs or protrusions at each corner where the faces meet. Chemical analysis shows they're made from typical Roman bronze alloys. Nothing exotic or mysterious about their composition. The myth of their mystery partly stems from what popular culture chooses to ignore. Roman dodecahedrons have never been found in Rome itself or in the Mediterranean heartland of the empire. They don't appear in Roman art, literature, or technical manuals. No Roman writer ever mentioned them, which strongly suggests they weren't considered important enough to document, This geographic and literary silence contradicts the popular narrative of sophisticated imperial technology. Archaeological context provides crucial insights that online theories overlook. Dodecahedrons are typically found in civilian settlements, rather than military camps, and often in contexts associated with crafts or domestic activities. Several have been discovered alongside other bronze objects like brooches, tools, and decorative items. The distribution pattern matches other Romano-British craft traditions that developed in the provinces, suggesting local innovation rather than imperial standard equipment. The most persistent myth involves their supposed complexity and precision. Internet videos often emphasize the mathematical properties of the dodecahedron shape, suggesting ancient Romans needed advanced geometric knowledge to create them. In reality, dodecahedrons were well-known geometric forms in the Roman world. Roman mathematicians had inherited Greek geometric traditions, and the dodecahedron was one of the 5 Platonic solids described by ancient philosophers. Creating a 12-sided object wasn't a technological breakthrough, it was basic applied geometry. Recent archaeological work has provided more prosaic explanations for their function. The most credible theories focus on practical uses consistent with their provincial distribution and domestic contexts. The graduated holes suggest they may have been tools for working with fibres, possibly for making cords, chains, or even knitting-like textile work. The size variations could indicate different gauges for different materials. Experimental archaeology has tested various theories about their use. Attempts to use them as surveying instruments have failed to produce consistent or accurate results. Tests as dice show they don't roll fairly due to their weight distribution. But experiments with fibre crafts have shown promising results. The holes can indeed be used to create consistent cord thicknesses, and the object's weight and shape make it suitable for certain textile techniques. The true significance of Roman dodecahedrons lies not in mysterious ancient technology, but in what they reveal about innovation in the Roman provinces. These objects represent local craftsmen adapting Roman metalworking skills to create specialized tools for regional needs. They're evidence of the creativity and technical skill that flourished in Roman Britain and Gaul, showing how provincial artisans developed their own solutions to practical problems. The Phaistos disc. When researchers set out to crack the code of the Phaistos disc, they faced a unique challenge in archaeological investigation. Unlike other ancient scripts with hundreds or thousands of examples, they had exactly one artifact, a single clay disc bearing 241 mysterious symbols arranged in a spiral pattern. This meant applying every available scientific technique to extract maximum information from this solitary piece of evidence. The investigation would require computational linguistics, statistical analysis, materials science, and digital imaging technology working together to unlock secrets hidden for over 3,000 years. The scientific investigation began with fundamental questions about the disc's physical properties. Discovered in 1908 at the Minoan Palace of Phaistos on Crete, the disc immediately puzzled archaeologists with its unique manufacturing technique. Instead of being hand-carved like other ancient scripts, each symbol had been stamped into wet clay using individual seals or stamps. This printing-like technology was unprecedented in Bronze Age archaeology, making the disc potentially the world's first example of movable-type printing. Microscopic analysis revealed crucial details about the stamping process. High-resolution photography and scanning electron microscopy showed that each symbol was created using a separate stamp, evidenced by slight variations in depth, angle, and pressure. Some symbols showed overstamping, where one stamp was pressed on top of another, providing clues about the sequence of creation. The clay analysis revealed it was local Cretan material, fired at temperatures consistent with Middle Bronze Age ceramic techniques. Digital imaging technology transformed the investigation process. Researchers created ultra-high-resolution scans of both sides of the disc, allowing for precise measurements of each symbol's dimensions and position. Three-dimensional modelling revealed subtle details invisible to naked eye examination, including slight depressions and raised areas that provided insights into the stamping sequence. This digital documentation made it possible to analyse the disc without repeatedly handling the fragile original. Statistical analysis became the primary tool for understanding the symbol system. Researchers catalogued all 45 unique symbols, analysing their frequency distribution and positional patterns. Symbol frequency analysis revealed that some signs appeared much more often than others, following patterns consistent with natural language rather than decorative art. The most common symbol appears 19 times, while 18 symbols appear only once, creating a distribution curve similar to letter frequencies in known alphabetic scripts. N-gram analysis examined how symbols combined into groups. The investigation revealed that certain symbols frequently appeared together, while others never occurred in sequence. This pattern analysis suggested the symbols might represent syllables or words rather than individual letters. The spiral arrangement divided naturally into 61 groups separated by vertical lines, indicating probable word divisions that provided additional structural information for analysis. Entropy measurements quantified the information content within the symbol sequences. Computational linguists calculated the entropy levels and compared them to known languages and random symbol systems. The results showed information density consistent with meaningful text rather than decorative patterns or random arrangements. However, the entropy levels were lower than most alphabetic scripts, suggesting either a syllabic writing system or a limited vocabulary. The investigation process extended to comparative analysis with other Bronze Age scripts. Researchers systematically compared Phaistos symbols with Linear A, Linear B, and Cretan hieroglyphic scripts using digital databases and pattern recognition software. While some symbols showed visual similarities, no direct matches were found, confirming that the Phaistos disk represented a unique writing system not directly related to other known Minoan scripts. Machine learning approaches brought new analytical power to the investigation. Algorithms trained to recognize linguistic patterns analyzed the symbol sequences, searching for grammatical structures and morphological patterns. Hidden Markov models identified probable word boundaries and recurring patterns that might represent grammatical elements like prefixes or suffixes. Neural networks analyzed the visual similarities between symbols, creating family trees of related signs. Recent advances in computational analysis have focused on sequence modeling. Researchers applied techniques from bioinformatics, originally developed for DNA sequence analysis, to identify recurring motifs in the symbol patterns. These methods revealed structural regularities that support the hypothesis of meaningful linguistic content, rather than random arrangement or artistic decoration. The findings paint a complex picture of Bronze Age communication technology. The printing technique demonstrates sophisticated understanding of reproducible symbol creation, possibly indicating scribal schools or standardized administrative practices. The statistical properties suggest a functioning writing system with grammatical structure, though the limited text length prevents full decipherment using standard linguistic methods. However, significant scientific limitations remain in understanding the disk completely. The single example provides insufficient data for statistical techniques that require larger text samples. Without bilingual texts or clear pictographic elements, the meaning of individual symbols remains speculative. The unique printing technology has no parallel in Bronze Age archaeology, making it difficult to place the disk within broader technological developments, the Baghdad battery. Could the ancient world have harnessed electricity 2,000 years before Alessandro Volta invented the first modern battery? This is the central question raised by one of archaeology's most debated artifacts, the Baghdad battery, discovered in 1936 at Kujut Rabu, near Baghdad. This collection of objects consists of a ceramic jar, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod that, when assembled with an acidic solution, can generate a small electrical current. But did ancient Mesopotamians really understand electricity, or are we projecting modern knowledge onto simple ancient containers? The first and most dramatic theory proposes that these artifacts were indeed functioning galvanic cells used by ancient people for electroplating gold and silver onto other metals. Wilhelm Koenig, the German archaeologist who first identified their potential electrical properties in 1938, suggested that the Parthians and Sasanians used arrays of these devices to create the thin gold coatings found on many artifacts from the period. According to this theory, ancient metalworkers had discovered the principles of electrochemistry independently, developing a sophisticated understanding of electrical phenomena that wouldn't be rediscovered until the 18th century. The electroplating theory gained support from practical experiments. Modern replicas of the Baghdad battery can indeed generate electrical current when filled with acidic solutions like vinegar or lemon juice. Tests have shown these devices can produce between 0.8 and 2 volts. enough to perform basic electroplating of small objects. Proponents point to the fine gold work found in ancient Mesopotamian artifacts, suggesting this level of precision and uniformity could only be achieved through electrochemical processes rather than traditional fire gilding techniques. However, the electroplating theory faces significant archaeological challenges. Despite decades of searching, no ancient workshop has been found containing multiple batteries arranged for electroplating purposes. Chemical analysis of supposedly electroplated ancient artifacts has failed to find the characteristic signatures that would indicate electrochemical deposition rather than traditional gilding methods. Moreover, fire gilding and mercury amalgam techniques were well established in the ancient world and could produce results identical to those attributed to electroplating. The second major theory takes a more conservative approach, suggesting the objects served conventional storage purposes. Archaeologists, noting that similar ceramic jars were commonly used throughout the ancient Near East for storing scrolls, documents, and religious texts, proposed that the copper cylinder and iron rod were simply scroll containers designed to protect papyrus or parchment from moisture and insects. The copper cylinder would have provided an additional barrier against environmental damage, while the iron rod might have served as a central support for rolled documents. This storage theory finds support in the archaeological context. The Baghdad battery was found in an area known for religious and administrative activities, exactly where document storage would be expected. Similar copper-lined containers have been discovered at other Mesopotamian sites, though without the iron rods. The dimensions of the copper cylinder are consistent with scroll storage, and the tight-fitting design would have created an effective moisture seal for preserving organic materials. Yet the storage theory struggles to explain why such elaborate construction would be necessary for simple document preservation. The specific combination of metals, copper and iron, creates the exact conditions needed for a galvanic reaction, which seems coincidental if electricity wasn't the intended purpose. The iron rod's pointed end and the copper cylinder's construction details appear deliberately designed to maximize electrical contact rather than optimize document storage. A third theory emerged more recently, proposing a medical or religious application. Some researchers suggest the devices were used for primitive electrotherapy, applying mild electrical shocks for pain relief or religious experiences. Ancient medical texts from various cultures describe treatments involving metallic objects and acidic solutions, which could represent early forms of electrical medicine. The theory proposes that priests or healers used the electrical sensations produced by these devices as part of healing rituals or mystical experiences. The medical theory gains some support from cross-cultural evidence. Ancient Egyptian texts mention treatments using metals and acidic solutions, while traditional Chinese medicine employed various metallic objects for therapeutic purposes. The mild electrical current produced by the Baghdad battery would create sensations similar to those described in historical medical texts, suggesting possible therapeutic applications. However, there's no specific textual evidence linking the Baghdad battery artifacts to medical practices. The archaeological context doesn't suggest medical usage, and no similar devices have been found at known ancient hospitals or healing centres. The theory remains largely speculative, based more on the device's electrical properties than on solid archaeological evidence. Modern scientific analysis continues to refine understanding of these enigmatic objects. Materials science techniques have confirmed the artifact's authenticity and dating to the Parthian period, between 250 BCE and 224 CE. Chemical analysis of corrosion products suggests the devices were indeed exposed to acidic solutions, though this could result from natural groundwater rather than intentional use. The Shroud of Turin. Medieval Europe was a world obsessed with holy relics. By the 14th century, the trade in sacred objects had become one of the most lucrative businesses in Christendom. Churches competed to acquire pieces of the true cross, fragments of saints' bones, and anything connected to Christ's passion. It was a time when pilgrimage routes crisscrossed the continent, when cathedrals rose and fell based on the drawing power of their sacred treasures, and when the boundary between faith and commerce had become increasingly blurred. Into this world of relic hunger and religious fervour emerged one of history's most controversial artefacts, the Shroud of Turin. The shroud first appeared in the historical record in 1357, when it was displayed at the Collegiate Church of Lirey, a small village in north-central France. The timing was not coincidental. This was the height of the medieval relic trade, when European Christianity was recovering from the devastating Black Death that had killed 1/3 of the population just a decade earlier. People desperately sought signs of divine favour, and relics provided both spiritual comfort and economic opportunity for the communities that possessed them. The mystery of the Shroud must be understood within this context of 14th century relic culture. Medieval Europe was flooded with supposed fragments of Christ's burial cloth, pieces of the crown of thorns, and vials of holy blood. Constantinople's fall to Crusaders in 1204 had released a treasure trove of Byzantine relics into Western markets, creating both authentic artifacts and a booming industry in forgeries. The Shroud appeared during this golden age of relic collecting, when demand far exceeded supply and the line between genuine devotion and profitable deception was often invisible. Yet the Shroud of Turin stood apart from typical medieval relics. Unlike bone fragments or cloth pieces that could be easily fabricated, the Shroud bore a mysterious full-body image that defied explanation. Medieval accounts described the faint impressions of a crucified man, complete with wound marks consistent with gospel descriptions of Christ's crucifixion. The image was barely visible to the naked eye, appearing more like a photographic negative than the bold religious art typical of the period. Contemporary documents reveal the controversy the Shroud generated even in medieval times. In 1389, Pierre d'Arcy, Bishop of Troyes, wrote a memorandum to Pope Clement VII claiming the Shroud was a forgery and that his predecessor had identified the artist who created it. Yet, despite ecclesiastical skepticism, the Shroud continued to attract pilgrims and generate income for its owners, eventually passing to the House of Savoy in the 15th century. The broader historical context reveals how the Shroud fits into patterns of medieval religious and social change. The 14th century saw increasing emphasis on the humanity of Christ, with devotional practices focusing on Christ's physical suffering during the Passion. The Shroud perfectly served this spiritual need, providing a tangible connection to Christ's crucifixion that went far beyond abstract theological concepts. It offered visual proof of the Gospel accounts, making the crucifixion story immediate and real for medieval believers. The Shroud also reflects the complex relationship between faith and science that would define subsequent centuries. Medieval Christianity was beginning to grapple with empirical observation and natural philosophy, setting the stage for later conflicts between religious belief and scientific investigation. The Shroud existed at this intersection, a religious artifact that seemed to invite scientific scrutiny while challenging the boundaries of medieval knowledge. When modern science finally turned its attention to the Shroud, the results only deepened the mystery. The 1988 radiocarbon dating tests, conducted at 3 independent laboratories, placed the Shroud's origin between 1260 and 1390 CE, precisely the period when it first appeared in historical records. This seemingly confirmed the medieval forgery hypothesis, supporting Bishop d'Arcis's 14th century accusations. However, the scientific investigation revealed complexities that medieval forgery theories couldn't easily explain. The image formation process remains unexplained by modern science. It's not paint, dye, or any known artistic medium. The cloth shows evidence of actual blood, and the image displays anatomical accuracy that would have required sophisticated knowledge of crucifixion effects. These findings suggest that, even if the Shroud dates to medieval times, its creation involved techniques or circumstances that current science cannot replicate or fully understand. The implications of the Shroud of Turin extend beyond questions of religious authenticity to our understanding of medieval society itself. Whether genuine relic or sophisticated forgery, the Shroud demonstrates the remarkable intersection of faith, commerce, and technology in medieval Europe. It reveals a world where religious devotion drove technological innovation, where the demand for authentic spiritual experience created markets for both genuine artifacts and elaborate deceptions. Yonaguni Monument, Japan. The discovery happened by accident, as many of the world's most significant archaeological finds do. In 1986, Kihachiro Aratake, a local diving tour operator, was exploring the waters off Yonaguni Island in Okinawa, searching for new dive sites to show tourists the area's famous hammerhead sharks. As he descended to about 25 meters below the surface, something extraordinary caught his eye through the clear Pacific waters, massive stone structures that looked like nothing he'd ever seen before. What Arataki discovered that day would become one of the most controversial underwater finds in archaeological history. Rising from the ocean floor were what appeared to be stepped pyramids, terraced platforms, and carved stone blocks arranged in geometric patterns. The largest structure measured approximately 50 meters long and 20 meters wide, with walls rising up to 8 meters high. The formations looked deliberately constructed, with straight edges, right angles, and what appeared to be stairs, roads, and even drainage channels carved into the stone. The initial discovery triggered an immediate response from Japanese researchers. Marine geologist Masaki Kimura from the University of the Ryukyus began systematic underwater surveys of the site in 1987. Over the following decades, Kimura and his team mapped the entire complex, revealing not just one structure but a collection of formations spread across several hundred meters of seafloor. Using underwater photography, sonar mapping, and detailed measurements, they documented what they believed to be the remains of an ancient civilization. Kimura's archaeological work revealed features that seemed to suggest human construction. He identified what appeared to be carved faces, including one formation that resembled a human head with distinct facial features. The team found straight-edged cuts in the rock that appeared too precise to be natural, along with what looked like post holes that could have supported wooden structures. Most intriguingly, they discovered what appeared to be hieroglyphic-like markings carved into some of the stone surfaces. The research expanded to include detailed bathymetric surveys that created three-dimensional maps of the entire site. These studies revealed the complex's layout, showing how different structures related to each other and how water would have flowed through the channels when the area was above sea level. Kimura's team also conducted comparative studies with known archaeological sites, finding similarities between Yonaguni's features and ancient constructions found elsewhere in Japan and throughout the Pacific region. However, the archaeological findings immediately generated controversy within the scientific community. In 1997, geologist Robert Schoch from Boston University conducted his own investigation of the site. Schoch, who had previously gained attention for his research on the Sphinx's age, reached dramatically different conclusions about Yonaguni. After examining the rock formations, geological layers, and natural weathering patterns, he concluded that the monument was most likely a natural geological formation shaped by tectonic activity and erosion. Schoch's geological analysis focused on the sandstone composition of the Yonaguni formation. He observed that the rock naturally fractures along predictable planes due to its geological structure, creating the straight edges and right angles that Kimura interpreted as evidence of human construction. Schoch argued that the step-like formations were consistent with natural geological processes, particularly the way sedimentary rocks break and erode under marine conditions. The scientific investigation expanded to include studies of sea level changes in the region. Research showed that the Yonaguni area was above sea level during the last ice age, approximately 12,000 years ago when global sea levels were much lower. This timing became crucial to the debate. If the structures were artificial, they would have been built when the area was dry land, making them among the oldest known human constructions in the world. Current research continues to examine both possibilities through multiple scientific approaches. Advanced sonar mapping and underwater robotics have provided increasingly detailed images of the formations, while geological surveys have attempted to determine whether the features could result from natural processes alone. Some researchers have found evidence of tool marks and deliberate modifications to the rock surfaces, while others point to similar natural formations found elsewhere in the region. Recent studies have focused on the site's relationship to known archaeological sites on Yonaguni Island itself. Above-ground excavations have revealed ancient stone tools and pottery fragments that suggest human presence on the island for thousands of years. Some researchers argue that these findings support the possibility that ancient peoples could have worked on the underwater structures when they were still on dry land. The debate over Yonaguni's origins has expanded beyond geology and archaeology to include studies of ancient technologies and construction techniques. Experimental archaeology has attempted to determine whether the precision cutting and large-scale construction evident at the site could have been achieved with Stone Age tools and techniques available to ancient peoples. The underwater city of Dwarka, India. Ancient India was a civilization built on stories. For over 3 millennia, the great epics of the Mahabharata and Ramayana have shaped Indian culture, passing down through generations accounts of heroic kings, divine beings, and magnificent cities that once dotted the subcontinent. Among these legendary places, none held more significance than Dwarka, the golden city of Lord Krishna, described in Sanskrit texts as a marvel of urban planning with palaces, gardens, and harbours that rivaled the greatest cities of the ancient world. For centuries, these stories were considered mythology, beautiful tales that reflected spiritual truths rather than historical facts. The mystery of Dwarka emerges from this intersection of legend and history. According to the Mahabharata, the city was built by Krishna as his capital after he left Mathura, creating a magnificent metropolis on the western coast of India. The ancient texts describe Dwarka as having been constructed on reclaimed land, with sophisticated harbour facilities and urban infrastructure that supported hundreds of thousands of residents. Most significantly, the epic states that, immediately after Krishna's death, the entire city was swallowed by the ocean, disappearing beneath the waves of the Arabian Sea. This narrative placed Dwarka within the broader context of ancient Indian civilization during what scholars call the Late Vedic period, roughly 1000 to 600 BCE. This was an era of significant urban development across northern India, when cities like Hastinapura, Indraprastha, and Kausambi were emerging as major political and commercial centres. Archaeological evidence from this period shows sophisticated knowledge of urban planning, metallurgy, and maritime trade, exactly the kinds of capabilities that would be needed to build the Dwarka described in ancient texts. The underwater discoveries began in the 1980s when marine archaeologist S.R. Rao of the National Institute of Oceanography launched systematic explorations off the coast of modern Dwarka. Between 1983 and 1990, Rao conducted 12 major underwater expeditions revealing stone structures, walls, and artifacts submerged beneath the Arabian Sea. The discoveries included semicircular, rectangular, and square stone foundations, ancient anchors, and pottery fragments that suggested continuous human habitation and maritime activity. The archaeological findings revealed a complex pattern of settlement that spanned several millennia. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials found at the site produced dates ranging from 3000 BCE to 1500 CE, indicating that the area had been continuously occupied for thousands of years. The underwater structures showed evidence of different construction phases, suggesting the site had been built, destroyed, and rebuilt multiple times throughout its history. Within the broader context of Indian Ocean trade networks, Dwarka's location made perfect strategic sense. The site sits at the confluence of several major sea routes that connected ancient India with the Arabian Peninsula, East Africa, and Southeast Asia. Archaeological evidence from the region shows extensive trade connections, with artifacts including beads from Mesopotamia, Roman coins, and pottery from various parts of the Indian Ocean world. This maritime orientation fits perfectly with the Mahabharata's description of Dwarka as a major port city. The discoveries at Dwarka also align with patterns of climate and environmental change that affected the entire region. Studies of sea level fluctuations show that the Indian Ocean coastline has changed dramatically over the past 5,000 years, with several periods of rising and falling sea levels that would have alternately exposed and submerged coastal settlements. The cyclical pattern of submersion and re-emergence described in ancient texts matches geological evidence for environmental changes in the region. Modern investigations have employed increasingly sophisticated techniques to understand the site's complex history. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed additional structures still buried beneath marine sediments, while chemical analysis of artifacts has provided insights into ancient manufacturing techniques and trade connections. Side-scan sonar mapping has revealed the full extent of the underwater ruins, showing they cover several square kilometres of seafloor. The implications of the Dwarka discoveries extend far beyond confirming ancient texts. They demonstrate that ancient Indian civilization possessed sophisticated maritime capabilities much earlier than previously thought. The evidence suggests that complex urban planning, advanced metallurgy, and extensive sea trade were well established in the region by at least 2000 BCE, pushing back the timeline of Indian Ocean commerce and urban development. The site also reveals how ancient peoples adapted to environmental challenges, particularly sea level rise and coastal flooding. The multiple construction phases suggest that the inhabitants of ancient Dwarka repeatedly rebuilt their city in response to changing coastal conditions, developing engineering solutions that allowed them to maintain their maritime focus despite environmental pressures. The Bimini Road, Bahamas. What if you discovered a perfectly straight line of massive stone blocks on the ocean floor, arranged so precisely they look like an ancient highway? This is exactly what puzzled 3 divers in 1968 when they found the Bimini Road off the coast of North Bimini Island in the Bahamas. Stretching for over 1,600 feet beneath 15 feet of crystal clear water, this formation consists of rectangular limestone blocks that appear to have been deliberately placed in 2 parallel rows. The discovery sparked one of archaeology's most enduring debates. Is this evidence of an ancient civilization, or simply a remarkable natural formation? The most sensational theory connects the Bimini Road to the lost city of Atlantis. This theory gained momentum because the discovery seemed to fulfill a specific prediction made by Edgar Cayce, the famous American psychic known as the Sleeping Prophet. In 1938, Cayce had prophesied that portions of Atlantis would rise near Bimini between 1968 and 1969. When the underwater formation was discovered in September 1968, believers saw it as confirmation of Cayce's vision. Proponents of the Atlantis theory point to several compelling features of the formation. The blocks are remarkably uniform in size, typically measuring 10 to 15 feet in length and arranged in neat parallel rows. Some stones appear to have been deliberately cut, with sharp edges and flat surfaces that seem too precise to be natural. The formation includes what appears to be a curved section, suggesting sophisticated planning rather than random geological processes. Additionally, the stones show evidence of having been fitted together with smaller rocks, filling gaps between larger blocks, a construction technique used in ancient architecture. The theory gained support from the broader context of underwater discoveries in the Bahamas. Researchers have found what appear to be other submerged structures in the region, including circular formations and stone platforms that some interpret as evidence of ancient construction. The timing also fits with known periods of lower sea levels during the last ice age, when the area would have been dry land suitable for building. However, the mainstream scientific community strongly disputes the ancient civilization theory. Geologists argue that the Bimini Road is a natural formation known as beach rock, a type of limestone that forms when beach sediments are cemented together by calcium carbonate precipitation. This process occurs in intertidal zones where fresh water meets salt water, creating the chemical conditions necessary for rapid rock formation. The natural formation theory explains many features that seem artificial. Beach rock typically forms in parallel bands along ancient shorelines, which would account for the linear arrangement of the stones. The process creates natural fractures that can produce rectangular blocks with surprisingly straight edges. When sea levels rose after the last ice age, wave action would have broken the beach rock into the block-like formations we see today. Scientific studies have provided strong evidence for the natural formation theory. Core samples taken from the blocks show typical beach rock composition with layers of sediment cemented by calcium carbonate. The mineral composition matches other confirmed beach rock formations throughout the Caribbean. Microscopic analysis reveals the presence of beach sand, shell fragments, and other materials consistent with natural coastal deposition rather than quarried stone. A third theory suggests the formation might be artificial but not ancient. Some researchers propose that the blocks could be ballast stones dumped by ships over the past few centuries, or construction materials left over from modern harbour projects. This theory would explain the uniform size and arrangement without requiring ancient civilizations or mysterious geological processes. The ballast theory finds some support in historical records showing that the Bahamas were a major shipping route during the colonial period. Ships regularly dumped ballast stones when taking on lighter cargo, and these stones often ended up in organised piles on the seafloor. The rectangular shape and uniform size of the Bimini blocks are consistent with quarried ballast stones used in 18th and 19th century shipping. Yet the ballast theory faces significant challenges. The sheer quantity of stone, thousands of blocks covering a large area, would represent an enormous amount of ballast from multiple ships. The precise linear arrangement seems too organised for randomly dumped cargo. Additionally, the blocks show no evidence of metal tools or modern quarrying techniques that would be expected in post-Columbian construction materials. Recent underwater archaeology has attempted to resolve the debate through systematic investigation. Side-scan sonar mapping has revealed the full extent of the formation, showing it consists of multiple parallel lines of blocks rather than a single road. Radiocarbon dating of organic materials found within the rocks has yielded dates ranging from 2,000 to 4,000 years old, but these dates reflect when the beach rock formed rather than when any hypothetical construction occurred, the Plain of Jars, Laos. When scientists first attempted to understand the Plain of Jars in Laos, they faced a unique methodological challenge. How do you scientifically investigate over 2,100 massive stone vessels scattered across a landscape riddled with unexploded ordnance from the Vietnam War? The answer required developing entirely new approaches to archaeological fieldwork, combining cutting-edge dating techniques, drone technology, and non-invasive imaging methods to safely unlock the secrets of one of Southeast Asia's most mysterious archaeological sites. The investigation process began with addressing the immediate safety concerns. Much of the Plain of Jars remained contaminated with cluster bombs and landmines, making traditional archaeological excavation extremely dangerous. Researchers from the University of Melbourne and Monash University developed protocols using ground-penetrating radar and magnetometry to identify both buried jars and explosive devices before any excavation could begin. This safety-first approach transformed how archaeology could be conducted in post-conflict zones. The scientific team employed optically stimulated luminescence dating as their primary chronological tool. OSL dating measures when sediment grains were last exposed to sunlight, providing crucial information about when the massive stone jars were placed in their current positions. Researchers collected sediment samples from beneath jars at multiple sites, carefully extracting material that had been sealed in darkness since the jars were positioned. The laboratory analysis involved exposing these samples to controlled light sources while measuring the luminescent signals released by quartz and feldspar crystals. The OSL dating process revealed extraordinary results. Sediments from beneath the jars at Site 2 provided dates suggesting the megaliths were emplaced potentially as early as the late 2nd millennium BCE, pushing back the timeline of this remarkable culture by centuries. This dating evidence indicated that the Plain of Jars represented one of the earliest megalithic traditions in Southeast Asia, contemporary with similar monument-building cultures in Europe and other parts of Asia. Complementing the luminescence dating, radiocarbon analysis of organic materials found within and around the jars provided additional chronological data. Charcoal fragments, bone collagen, and other organic materials were processed using accelerator mass spectrometry, yielding dates that clustered primarily between 500 BCE and 500 CE. This temporal distribution suggested the sites were used for extended periods, with multiple phases of burial activity spanning nearly a millennium. The investigation expanded to include advanced imaging technologies that could safely document the sites without extensive excavation. High-resolution drone photography created detailed 3D models of entire jar fields, allowing researchers to analyze spatial relationships and site organization from the air. These aerial surveys revealed patterns invisible from ground level, showing how the jars were arranged in relation to topographic features and ancient pathways. Ground-penetrating radar surveys provided crucial subsurface information about buried jars and associated features. The GPR investigations revealed that many sites contained significantly more jars than were visible on the surface, with some completely buried by centuries of soil accumulation. The radar data also identified associated stone structures, possible mortuary features, and evidence of past human activity around the jar sites. The findings from excavations at Sites 1, 52 and other locations provided unprecedented insights into ancient burial practices. Systematic excavation revealed that the jars served as primary burial containers, with human remains later removed and reburied in nearby ceramic vessels or simple pits. This secondary burial practice involved complex mortuary rituals, where bodies were allowed to decompose within the large stone jars before the bones were ceremonially relocated. Experimental archaeology became crucial for understanding jar production and transport methods. Researchers located and studied the quarry sites where the jars were carved, finding evidence of sophisticated stoneworking techniques. Analysis of tool marks on both finished jars and quarry walls revealed the use of iron tools and advanced planning in jar production. Transport experiments using replica jars helped determine the logistics of moving vessels weighing up to 6 tons across the rugged landscape. Chemical analysis of the sandstone composition provided insights into jar origins and production. Using detrital zircon UPB dating, researchers traced individual jars back to their specific quarry sources, revealing complex patterns of jar production and distribution. Some jars had been transported over 25 kilometers from their quarries, indicating sophisticated organizational capabilities and possibly specialized craft production. Recent scientific investigations have focused on understanding the broader cultural context of the jar sites. Pollen analysis from sediment cores has reconstructed ancient environments, showing how climate and vegetation changed during the period of jar use. Isotope analysis of human remains has provided information about ancient diets and population movements, revealing connections between different jar sites and broader regional networks. The most recent research has employed machine learning algorithms to analyze the spatial distribution of jars across the landscape. Computational modeling has identified patterns that suggest the sites were positioned according to specific cultural or religious principles, rather than random placement. These analyses continue to reveal new aspects of the sophisticated planning and cultural significance behind these ancient monuments, demonstrating how modern scientific methods can illuminate the complex social and religious systems of prehistoric Southeast Asian societies. The stone spheres of Costa Rica. When Steven Spielberg needed an ancient mystery to open Raiders of the Lost Ark, he chose the stone spheres of Costa Rica. The iconic scene showing Indiana Jones fleeing from a massive rolling boulder introduced millions of viewers to these mysterious artifacts, transforming them from obscure archaeological curiosities into symbols of ancient enigma. Since then, the spheres have become regular features in documentaries about lost civilizations, alien visitation theories, and unexplained phenomena. Television shows like Ancient Aliens have suggested they were markers left by extraterrestrial visitors, while internet theories propose they were created by the lost civilization of Atlantis or represent some form of ancient technology we don't understand. The popular culture narrative has created a mythology around the spheres that emphasizes their supposed perfection and mysterious origins. Online videos regularly claim the spheres are perfectly round with mathematical precision that would be impossible to achieve without modern technology. Social media posts describe them as impossible artifacts that challenge our understanding of ancient capabilities. The spheres have become shorthand for the idea that ancient civilizations possessed advanced knowledge that modern science has forgotten, feeding into broader narratives about lost wisdom and suppressed archaeological evidence. But the archaeological reality tells a very different story. The stone spheres were discovered in the 1930s and 1940s by workers from the United Fruit Company who were clearing rainforest in the Dikwis Delta region for banana plantations. Over 300 spheres have been documented, ranging from small examples just a few centimeters in diameter to massive monuments over 2 meters across and weighing up to 15 tons. They were created by the Dikwis culture, a pre-Columbian civilization that flourished in southern Costa Rica from approximately 700 to 1530 CE. Archaeological excavations have revealed the sphere's true context within ancient settlements. Rather than being randomly scattered across the landscape as popular media suggests, the spheres were carefully placed within the ceremonial and residential areas of Diki villages. They were positioned on stone foundations, arranged in alignments, and associated with the homes of high-status individuals. The spheres served as symbols of power and prestige within a complex chiefdom society that controlled trade routes between the Pacific coast and the inland regions. The myth of their perfect roundness crumbles under scientific scrutiny. Detailed measurements show that while the spheres are remarkably spherical, they're not mathematically perfect. Most exhibit slight variations and irregularities that reflect their handmade origins. The larger spheres deviate from true sphericity by several centimeters, well within the range of skilled craftsmanship but far from the mechanical precision claimed by popular theories. Research by archaeologist John Hoops and others has documented the actual manufacturing techniques used by Dikwi artisans. The spheres were carved from local igneous rocks, primarily gabbro and granodiorite, using stone tools and abrasives. Evidence from quarry sites shows how workers shaped rough boulders into spherical forms through controlled fracturing and careful grinding. The process required enormous skill and patience, but no mysterious technology, just the accumulated expertise of master stoneworkers. The contrast between myth and reality extends to their supposed astronomical alignments. While some popular theories claim the spheres were positioned according to celestial coordinates or served as astronomical computers, archaeological mapping shows their arrangements followed the practical needs of Dikwi settlements. The spheres marked important spaces within villages, boundaries between different areas, and pathways connecting residential zones to ceremonial centres. Modern research has revealed the sphere's true significance within the broader context of pre-Columbian Costa Rican society. The Dikwis culture was part of the Chibchan-speaking peoples who created some of the most sophisticated goldwork and stone carving traditions in the Americas. The spheres represented the pinnacle of their sculptural achievement, requiring coordinated efforts by specialized craftsmen and serving as permanent markers of social identity and territorial control. The spheres also demonstrate the complex social organization of Dikwis chiefdoms. The effort required to quarry, transport, and precisely carve these monuments indicates a society with surplus labor, specialized roles, and hierarchical organization. The distribution of spheres across the landscape reflects the territorial boundaries of different chiefs and the competitive display of wealth and power that characterized these ancient societies. Recent archaeological work has focused on understanding the spheres within their original cultural context, rather than as isolated mysteries. Excavations at sites like Finca 6 have revealed how the spheres were integrated into complete settlement systems, associated with residential platforms, ceremonial areas, and burial grounds that together formed the material expression of Dikwi political and religious life. The Nazca Lines, Peru. Sometimes the most profound discoveries happen when we least expect them. In 1927, Peruvian archaeologist Toribio Mejia Cespe was hiking through the desert foothills near Nazca, conducting what he thought would be a routine archaeological survey. But as he climbed higher into the hills overlooking the vast desert plateau, something extraordinary caught his eye. Stretching across the barren landscape below were long, straight lines etched into the desert floor. Lines so massive and precise they seemed impossible to create without some way to see the bigger picture from above. Cespe was witnessing the first scientific observation of what would become one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. He described them as ceremonial roads, having no idea he was looking at just a tiny fraction of an artistic achievement that covered over 450 square kilometers. These weren't just lines, they were part of a vast collection of geoglyphs, including massive figures of animals, plants, and geometric shapes, some stretching over 300 meters in length, all invisible to anyone walking on the ground. The true scope of the discovery became clear in the 1940s when American historian Paul Kosok began flying over the Nazca Plateau. From the air, the full magnitude of the achievement was revealed. The desert contained not just the lines Cespe had spotted, but hundreds of figures: hummingbirds, monkeys, spiders, condors, and whales, along with geometric patterns of stunning complexity and precision. The geoglyphs were created by removing the dark surface stones to reveal the lighter soil beneath, creating images that had survived in the dry desert for over 1,000 years. The archaeological work intensified when German mathematician Maria Reiche joined Kosok's research in 1946. For the next 5 decades, Reiche would dedicate her life to mapping, measuring and protecting the Nazca Lines. Working alone with simple tools, a broom, measuring tape and ladder, she documented hundreds of figures and proposed theories about their astronomical significance. Reiche's meticulous work revealed the remarkable precision of the lines, with some stretching for kilometers in perfectly straight paths across the desert terrain. The findings from systematic archaeological excavation have provided crucial insights into how the lines were created. The Nazca people, who flourished from 100 to 700 CE, created the geoglyphs by carefully removing the iron oxide-coated pebbles that give the desert its dark colour, exposing the lighter-coloured earth beneath. The removed stones were piled along the edges of the lines, creating low walls that help preserve the designs. The dry climate and minimal wind have kept many lines perfectly preserved for over 1,500 years. Current theories about the line's purpose have evolved dramatically as archaeological evidence has accumulated. Reiche's astronomical calendar theory proposed that the lines pointed to important celestial events, serving as a massive observatory for tracking solstices, equinoxes, and the rising of significant constellations. While some alignments with astronomical phenomena have been confirmed, the vast majority of lines don't correspond to celestial events, suggesting more complex purposes. Recent archaeological research has focused on the line's relationship to water and fertility rituals. Many geoglyphs are located near underground water sources or ancient irrigation systems, leading researchers to propose that the lines were part of ceremonies designed to petition the gods for rain in this extremely arid environment. The animal figures often represent creatures associated with water, marine animals that would have been spiritually connected to the life-giving properties of the ocean. The most revolutionary development in Nazca research came with the application of artificial intelligence technology. In 2019, researchers from Yamagata University partnered with IBM to use machine learning algorithms to scan satellite imagery of the entire Nazca region. This AI-assisted survey discovered 143 new geoglyphs in areas that had been studied by archaeologists for decades. The technology could identify subtle variations in surface colour and texture that human eyes had missed. The AI discoveries accelerated dramatically in 2024, when the same research team deployed advanced deep learning systems across the entire UNESCO World Heritage Site. In just 6 months, the AI identified 303 additional figurative geoglyphs, nearly doubling the number of known figures and representing a 16-fold increase in the discovery rate compared to traditional methods. These new findings included depictions of parrots, cats, monkeys, killer whales, and human figures that had remained hidden despite decades of intensive study. The ongoing research reveals that the Nazca lines are far more extensive than previously imagined. The AI surveys have shown that geoglyphs extend well beyond the main plateau into surrounding hills and valleys, suggesting the entire landscape was transformed into a sacred space. Dating techniques applied to organic materials found beneath the lines indicate construction occurred over several centuries, with different figures created during different periods of Nazca culture. The Khat Shabib Wall, Jordan. What would possess an ancient civilization to build a 150-kilometre stone wall across the desert? The Khat Shabib Wall in southern Jordan presents one of the Middle East's most puzzling archaeological mysteries. Stretching for 93 miles through harsh desert terrain, this ancient barrier includes 100 watchtowers and countless smaller structures, making it the longest linear archaeological site in Jordan. Yet despite its massive scale and obvious importance to its builders, archaeologists cannot agree on its purpose, its builders, or even when it was constructed. The first major theory proposes that the Khat Shabib was a defensive barrier constructed by the Nabateans, the Arabian trading people who controlled the region from the 4th century BCE to the 1st century CE. Proponents of this theory point to the wall's strategic position, controlling access to the fertile highlands from the eastern desert. The numerous watchtowers would have provided an early warning system against raids by desert nomads, while the wall itself would have created a formidable obstacle for attackers. The Nabateans, known for their sophisticated engineering and defensive capabilities, certainly possessed the technical skills needed for such a massive construction project. The defensive theory gained support from the wall's construction features. The watchtowers are positioned at regular intervals with clear lines of sight between them, creating an integrated surveillance system. The wall height, originally estimated at 1-2 meters, would have been sufficient to stop mounted raiders and force them to dismount, making them vulnerable to defenders. The construction technique using local limestone blocks fitted together without mortar matches other Nabatean defensive structures found throughout Jordan. However, the defensive theory faces significant challenges. The wall's construction appears surprisingly flimsy for a military barrier. Many sections consist of single-thickness walls that would have been easily breached by determined attackers. The watchtowers lack the heavy fortifications typically found in defensive structures, and many show no evidence of extended occupation. Most puzzling, the wall doesn't follow the most logical defensive route. It bypasses several strategic passes and natural choke points where a defensive barrier would be most effective. The second major theory suggests the wall served as a pastoral boundary, separating settled agricultural areas from nomadic grazing lands. According to this interpretation, the Khat Shabib mark the eastern limit of intensive farming and permanent settlement, creating a clear demarcation between two different ways of life. The wall would have prevented conflicts between farmers and herders over land use. while the watchtowers served as administrative outposts rather than military installations. The pastoral boundary theory finds support in the wall's alignment with ecological zones. The structure roughly follows the boundary between areas suitable for agriculture and the more arid regions where only pastoralism was viable. Historical and ethnographic evidence shows that such boundaries were common in the ancient Middle East, where conflicts between sedentary and nomadic populations required clear territorial demarcation. The wall's relatively low height makes sense for livestock control rather than military defence. Yet this theory also encounters problems. The massive scale of the construction seems disproportionate for simple boundary marking. Building a 150-kilometre wall would have required enormous resources and labour, an unlikely investment for marking grazing boundaries. Moreover, the watchtower's strategic positioning suggests surveillance purposes that go beyond simple boundary maintenance. The structure's complexity indicates a more significant purpose than livestock management. A third theory emerged from recent research suggesting the wall controlled trade routes rather than serving defensive or pastoral functions. The Khat Shabib's position along major caravan routes connecting the Arabian Peninsula with the Mediterranean could have made it a customs barrier, controlling and taxing the lucrative incense and spice trade. The watchtowers would have monitored caravan movements, while the wall forced merchants to use specific crossing points where taxes could be collected. The trade control theory aligns with the Nabateans' known role as masters of desert commerce. Their wealth derived from controlling trade routes, and the Khat Shabib's position would have given them leverage over merchants travelling between Arabia and the Mediterranean. The wall's construction during the Nabatean period would coincide with the height of this trade, providing economic motivation for such a massive investment. However, recent scientific dating has challenged assumptions about the wall's construction period. Luminescence dating of rock surfaces, published in 2018, produced dates ranging from the 1st century BCEE to the 8th century CE, suggesting the wall might have been built much later than previously thought. If constructed during the Byzantine or early Islamic periods, the wall would have served different purposes than Nabatean trade control. The dating evidence has opened new theoretical possibilities. Some researchers now propose the wall was built by Byzantine authorities to control Arab tribal movements during the 6th to 7th centuries CE, when the empire faced increasing pressure from nomadic raiders. Others suggest early Islamic rulers constructed it to establish territorial boundaries during the rapid expansion of the Arab conquests. We have journeyed through thousands of years of human history, from ancient temples to mysterious artifacts, across continents that still hold more questions than answers. Each mystery we've explored is a piece in the vast puzzle of human civilization, reminding us that despite all our modern technology and scientific methods, our ancestors continue to surprise us. The ancient builders are long gone, their techniques lost to time, and their true purposes remain hidden in stone and clay. Yet their creations endure, standing as silent witnesses to capabilities we're still trying to understand because they speak to something remarkable about human achievement and ingenuity. As archaeologists continue their careful work and new discoveries emerge from the earth, one truth remains clear. Somewhere beneath our feet, buried in desert sands or hidden in jungle ruins, lie answers to questions we haven't even learned to ask yet. The earth remembers everything and gives up its secrets slowly.